When Alexandra Morrison, the youngest tech billionaire on Earth, watched a humble maintenance worker pull something living from her deaf son's ear, she had no idea her entire world was about to shatter. For 10 years, the best doctors money could buy had failed Leo. But in a single moment, a man with grease-stained hands and a $5 flashlight did what millions couldn't. He gave a mother back her child's voice. This is their story, one of betrayal, redemption, and the sound of love. Before we begin, comment below with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let's dive in. The morning Leo Morrison collapsed, the sun hadn't yet burned through the fog that clung to the hills of Palo Alto like a silk shroud. It was 6:47 a.m. when David Keller pulled his dented Toyota into the service entrance of the Morrison estate, a sprawling glass and steel monument to wealth that seemed to defy gravity itself. Dave didn't belong in places like this. He knew it. Everyone knew it. But the boiler had been making strange noises for 3 days, and apparently, when you're worth $8 billion, even your hot water doesn't wait. Dave stepped out of his truck, work boots crunching against imported Italian gravel, and pulled his tool bag over his shoulder. His hands were rough, scarred from years of fixing things most people didn't think about: pipes, heaters, broken lives. At 42, he looked older. Grief had a way of aging a man faster than time ever could. He'd been a paramedic once, back when the world made sense, back when Sarah was alive. Las Vegas, October 1st, 2017. Route 91, Harvest Festival. Sarah had been there with her sister, singing along to country music under a sky full of stars, when the shots rang out. 58 people died that night. Sarah was number 33. Dave had been home with their 6-year-old son, Ethan, building a Lego tower when the call came. He quit emergency medicine 3 weeks later. Some wounds don't close, no matter how much time passes. Now he fixed boilers. It was simpler. Boilers didn't scream. They didn't bleed out in your arms while you begged them to stay. The Morrison estate loomed ahead, all sharp angles and reflective surfaces. Dave had been here twice before, once for a clogged sink in the West Wing, once for a malfunctioning thermometer in the wine cellar. He'd never seen the boy, though. Leo Morrison, the deaf kid. Everyone in the service industry knew about Leo, born deaf despite having 2 perfectly functioning parents. Alexandra Morrison had spent a fortune trying to fix him. Doctors from Switzerland, experimental treatments from Tokyo, surgeries in Boston. Nothing worked. The kid lived in silence, and his mother lived in guilt. Dave didn't judge. He understood what it meant to be helpless. He was halfway across the courtyard when he heard it, or rather, felt it. A low, guttural sound that wasn't quite a scream, more like a moan trapped in a throat that didn't know how to release it. Dave's paramedic instincts flared to life. He dropped his tool bag and ran toward the sound. He found Leo Morrison crumpled on the ground near the koi pond, his small body twisted at an unnatural angle, hands clutching the right side of his head. The boy's face was contorted in agony, tears streaming down his cheeks, mouth open in a silent wail that Dave felt more than heard. Hey, it's okay, buddy, I got you." Dave dropped to his knees, hands moving with practiced efficiency. He'd done this 1,000 times. Assess, stabilize, comfort. Leo's eyes were squeezed shut, his whole body trembling. His right hand clawed at his ear like he was trying to dig something out of his skull. Dave had seen pain before. Bullet wounds, burns, broken bones. But there was something uniquely terrifying about a child suffering in silence. "Can you hear me?" Dave asked, knowing the answer, but asking anyway. Leo didn't respond. Of course he didn't. Dave's eyes darted around, searching for help. The estate was massive, and it was early. No guards in sight, no staff. Just him and a 10-year-old boy drowning in pain. "Think, Dave. Think!" He gently pulled Leo's hand away from his ear and tilted the boy's head to get a better look. The ear was red, inflamed. Dave reached into his pocket and pulled out his keychain. A small LED flashlight dangled from it, the kind he used to check dark corners under sinks. He clicked it on and aimed the beam into Leo's ear canal. At first he saw nothing, just the normal pinkish interior of a child's ear. But then, something moved. Dave's breath caught. He leaned closer, adjusting the angle of the light. There, buried deep in the ear canal, partially obscured by wax and inflammation, was something black, something alive. Jesus Christ, Dave whispered. It wasn't debris. It wasn't earwax. It was a larva. A living, wriggling insect larva nestled so deep in Leo's ear that it had probably been there for years. Dave's hands began to shake. Not from fear, from anger. How had no one seen this? How had dozens of doctors, specialists, audiologists with equipment worth more than Dave's house missed something so obvious? He didn't have time to process it. Leo's breathing was becoming labored, his skin pale. Shock. The boy was going into shock. Dave had two options: run for help and risk Leo's condition worsening, or act now. He chose action. Okay, Leo, I need you to stay still, buddy. I know it hurts. I know. But I'm going to help you, okay? Just don't move. Dave reached into his tool bag and pulled out a pair of needle-nose pliers, sterilized, thank God, because he'd used them last week to fix a stuck valve in a medical office. He wiped them down with an alcohol pad from the first aid kit he always carried, took a deep breath, and steadied his hand. This was insane. He wasn't a doctor. He was a maintenance worker. If he screwed this up... But Leo's breathing hitched, and Dave saw the boy's lips turning blue. No time. Here we go, buddy. With the precision of a man who'd once sutured wounds in the back of a speeding ambulance, Dave inserted the pliers into Leo's ear canal. The angle had to be perfect. Too shallow, and he'd miss it. Too deep, and he'd rupture the eardrum. He felt the pliers connect with something soft. The larva. Got you, Dave muttered. He squeezed gently, praying he wouldn't tear it apart, and pulled. The larva came out in one piece, a fat black creature the size of a pencil eraser, still wriggling in the pliers' grip. Dave dropped it onto the gravel and crushed it under his boot. Leo gasped. It wasn't a sound a deaf child should make. It was sharp, sudden, a breath drawn in shock rather than necessity. Leo's eyes flew open, wide and confused, and for the first time in his life, he heard the crunch of gravel under Dave's boot. He heard the wind rustling through the trees. He heard the distant hum of a car engine. He heard the koi pond bubbling. And he heard Dave's voice. You're okay now, Leo. You're okay. Leo's lips moved, his brow furrowed in concentration, trying to form a sound he'd never made before. His vocal cords, unused for a decade, struggled to obey. Dave's heart pounded. It's okay. Take your time. Ma. And then, trembling and fragile as a newborn's cry, Leo Morrison spoke his first word. Mom? Down. The sound of running footsteps shattered the moment. Alexandra Morrison appeared around the corner of the estate, her silk robe billowing behind her like a cape. She was barefoot, her dark hair wild, her face a mask of panic. Behind her were two security guards and Mrs. Chen, the head housekeeper, all rushing toward the commotion. Leo! Alexandra screamed, dropping to her knees beside her son. She yanked him into her arms, her hands frantically checking him for injuries. What happened? Who the hell are you? Dave stood slowly, backing away with his hands raised. I'm the maintenance guy. Dave, I was here for the boiler. You touched my son? Alexandra's voice was ice and fire combined. Her green eyes locked onto Dave with the intensity of a predator spotting prey. You put your hands on my child? Ma'am, he was in distress. He's deaf. He's always in distress. That doesn't give you the right to... Mom? The word was so soft, so impossible, that for a moment no one moved. Alexandra froze. Her grip on Leo loosened. Her eyes went wide, pupils dilating in disbelief. Mom? Leo said again, louder this time. His voice was raw, unpracticed, but unmistakable. Alexandra's face drained of color. What? Leo, did you just... Mom, I can hear you. Tears spilled down Leo's cheeks. I can hear you. The world tilted. Alexandra swayed, and one of the guards caught her before she fell. She stared at her son like he'd returned from the dead, her mouth opening and closing with no sound. Dave stepped forward, holding out the pliers. Stuck to the tip was a smear of black residue. There was a larva in his ear canal. It's been there a while. Years, probably. It was blocking sound and causing pressure on the eardrum. Alexandra's gaze snapped to the pliers, then to Dave, then back to Leo. A what? An insect larva. I'm guessing a botfly. They're parasitic, lay eggs in warm, dark places. His ear canal would have been perfect. It probably hatched years ago and just stayed there, growing. Mrs. Chen gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. One of the guards muttered something in disbelief. Alexandra said nothing. She just stared at Dave, her expression unreadable. Leo reached up and touched his mother's face. "Mom," he whispered, "you're crying." And she was. Silent, streaming tears that she didn't bother to wipe away. She pulled Leo against her chest and buried her face in his hair, her shoulders shaking with sobs she'd been holding back for a decade. Dave took another step back, feeling suddenly like an intruder. I'll just go check on the boiler." "Wait." Alexandra's voice stopped him cold. She lifted her head, her tear-streaked face now hard as stone. "You expect me to believe that you, a maintenance worker, did what 50 of the world's best doctors couldn't?" Dave met her gaze evenly. "I don't expect you to believe anything, ma'am. I just did what needed doing." "And you just happened to have the skills to perform a medical procedure on my son?" "I was a paramedic. Before." Dave's voice was flat, emotionless. He didn't owe her his story. "Look, your son's okay now. That's what matters. I'll send you my bill for the boiler work." He turned to leave. "Stop." This time, the command was softer. Dave paused, but didn't turn around. "What's your name?" Alexandra asked. "David Keller." "David Keller." She repeated it like she was committing it to memory. "You saved my son's life." "I pulled a bug out of his ear. That's not the same thing." "To me, it is." Dave finally turned back. Alexandra was standing now, Leo still clinging to her. Her eyes were red, but the fury had drained away, replaced by something Dave couldn't quite name. Gratitude, maybe. Or shock. "He's been deaf since birth," Alexandra said, her voice breaking. "Every doctor, every specialist, they all said it was neurological, congenital, irreversible." She looked down at Leo. "They said he'd never hear, that I should accept it and move on." "They were wrong," Dave said simply. "How did they miss it?" Alexandra's voice rose again, anger creeping back in. "How did 50 doctors miss a goddamn bug in his ear?" Dave shrugged. "Because they stopped looking. They saw a deaf kid, ran their tests, made their diagnosis, and moved on. They didn't use a flashlight." The words hung in the air like an accusation. Mrs. Chen stepped forward, wringing her hands. "Miss Morrison, we should get Leo inside. He needs to be checked." "No." Alexandra cut her off. "No more doctors. Not today." She looked at Dave. "You, David, can you stay? Just for a little while? In case what?" Dave asked. "In case this is real." They moved inside. The interior of the Morrison estate was as cold and sterile as a museum. White marble floors, abstract art on the walls, furniture that looked expensive but uncomfortable. Dave felt out of place immediately, his work boots leaving faint scuff marks on the pristine floor. Alexandra led them to a sitting room overlooking the valley. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a view of Silicon Valley that probably cost more than Dave would earn in 10 lifetimes. She sat Leo down on a leather couch and knelt in front of him, her hands trembling as she cupped his face. "Leo," she whispered, "can you really hear me?" Leo nodded, tears still streaming. "Yes, I can hear everything. It's so loud, Mom. Everything is so loud." Dave had seen this before, sensory overload. A person who'd lived in silence suddenly thrust into a world of noise. It was overwhelming. "It'll take time to adjust," Dave said from the doorway. "His brain isn't used to processing sound. He'll need therapy probably, someone to help him filter everything out." Alexandra looked at him, her expression fierce. "Anything. I'll pay for anything." "I'm sure you will," Dave said quietly. For a moment silence filled the room, though not for Leo, who kept turning his head toward every tiny sound. The hum of the air conditioning, the distant chirp of a bird, the creak of leather as Alexandra shifted her weight. "How long?" Alexandra finally asked. "How long what?" "How long was that thing in his ear?" Dave hesitated. "Hard to say for sure. But based on the size and the inflammation, years. Maybe 5, maybe more." Alexandra's face went white. 5 years. Could be longer. 5 years. She stood abruptly, pacing toward the window, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. 5 years of specialists, 5 years of tests, brain scans, MRIs, cochlear implant consultations, surgeries. Her voice cracked. 5 years of being told there was nothing I could do. Dave said nothing. There was nothing to say. Do you know how many doctors examined him? Alexandra spun around, her eyes blazing. 47. 47 different specialists across 3 continents, and not one of them thought to check his goddamn ear with a flashlight? Mom, you're yelling, Leo said softly, wincing. Alexandra immediately softened, rushing back to his side. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. She kissed his forehead. I'm not angry at you. I'm angry at them. They tried, Leo said. Not hard enough. Dave cleared his throat. For what it's worth, they probably did try, but medicine's become complicated. Everyone's a specialist now. The audiologist checks hearing, the neurologist checks the brain, the ENT checks the throat. But nobody's looking at the whole picture. Nobody's thinking simple. Simple, Alexandra repeated bitterly. My son suffered for years because no one thought simple. That's about the size of it. Alexandra looked at him for a long moment, then back at Leo. Her expression shifted, grief giving way to something harder, something dangerous. Mrs. Chen, she said without looking away from Leo, call Dr. Ramirez. Tell him I want him here in 1 hour. And call Dr. Chen. No, call all of them. Every doctor who examined Leo in the last 5 years. I want a meeting, tomorrow morning. Miss Morrison, I'm not sure they'll all be available. I don't care if they're in surgery. I don't care if they're on vacation. Tell them if they're not in this house by 9 a.m. tomorrow, they'll be hearing from my lawyers by 9:01. Mrs. Chen paled but nodded and hurried from the room. Dave shifted uncomfortably. Look, I should really get going. I've got 3 more jobs today. How much? Alexandra asked. Dave blinked. How much what? How much do you charge for your services? $100 an hour for plumbing, but I didn't actually fix the boiler yet. No. Alexandra stood, crossing the room toward him. Up close, she was smaller than he'd thought. Maybe 5'6", but she radiated a kind of intensity that made her seem taller. How much to stay, here, today, to make sure Leo's okay? Dave frowned. I'm not a doctor, Miss Morrison. You're better than every doctor I've hired. She pulled out her phone. Name your price, double your hourly rate, triple it. I don't care. I can't. Please. The word was so raw, so desperate, that Dave stopped mid-sentence. He looked past Alexandra to where Leo sat on the couch, eyes wide and overwhelmed, trying to process a decade's worth of sound in a single morning. Dave thought of Ethan, his son, 6 years old and already growing up without a mother. What would Dave have done if someone could have saved Sarah? What price would he have paid? No charge, Dave said quietly. Alexandra blinked. What? I'll stay for a few hours. No charge. Just let me call my kid. Let him know I'll be late picking him up from school. For the first time since he'd arrived, Alexandra Morrison smiled. It was small, fragile, but real. Thank you. The hours that followed were surreal. Dr. Ramirez arrived first, a silver-haired man in an expensive suit who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. He examined Leo with an expression that shifted from skepticism to shock to horror as Dave explained what he'd found. A botfly larva? Dr. Ramirez said, his voice strangled. That's impossible. Clearly not, Dave said dryly. But we did full examinations. I personally examined Leo's ears 3 years ago. And you missed it, Alexandra said coldly. How? Dr. Ramirez stammered. The larva must have been deeper than standard otoscopic examination could reach, or hidden by inflammation, or you didn't look hard enough. The doctor had no response to that. More doctors arrived throughout the afternoon, neurologists, audiologists, pediatricians. Each one wore the same expression when they learned the truth: shock, disbelief, and shame. By 5 p.m., the sitting room had become an impromptu tribunal. 13 doctors sat in a semicircle, facing Alexandra and Leo like defendants awaiting sentencing. Dave stood in the corner, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold. He tried to leave twice, but Alexandra had asked him to stay. "You're the only one here who didn't fail my son," she'd said. So he stayed. Alexandra stood before the assembled doctors, her face carved from stone. Leo sat beside her, one hand clasped in hers, the other touching his ear every few minutes like he still couldn't believe what had happened. 14 times, Alexandra said, her voice echoing in the cavernous room. Leo complained of ear pain 14 times over the last 5 years. I have the records. I've checked. No one spoke. 14 times, he tried to tell us something was wrong, and every single time one of you dismissed it. You called it behavioral frustration. You said it was psychological. You told me he was acting out because of his disability, Doctor. Ramirez opened his mouth, but Alexandra silenced him with a look. A maintenance worker, she continued, with a $5 flashlight and 2 minutes of investigation found what 50 specialists couldn't find in 5 years. Do you understand how that makes me feel? Still, silence. It makes me feel, Alexandra said slowly, like I failed my son. Like I trusted the wrong people. Like I wasted years of his life because I believed you when you said there was nothing more to be done. Ms. Morrison, one of the doctors began, I'm not finished. The room went still. Alexandra's voice dropped to a whisper, but somehow it was louder than a shout. My son lived in silence for a decade, not because he was born deaf, not because of genetics or bad luck or God's will, but because every single person in this room was too arrogant to ask a simple question. Did we check everything? She looked at each doctor in turn. You failed him. All of you. And I will never forget that. Dr. Chen, a woman in her 50s who Dave recognized from his earlier visits, stood shakily. Ms. Morrison, we followed protocol. We ran every test. Your protocol failed. Medicine isn't perfect, but it should be better than this. Alexandra's voice cracked. It should be better than a man with no medical degree finding what you couldn't. Dave shifted uncomfortably. For the record, I do have medical training. Not the point, Alexandra snapped, though her tone softened when she looked at him. The point is that you looked. You saw my son as a person, not a diagnosis, and that made all the difference. The doctors sat in shamed silence. Finally, Dr. Ramirez stood. Miss Morrison, on behalf of everyone here, I want to apologize. What happened to Leo was unacceptable. If there's anything we can do, there is, Alexandra said. You can leave, all of you, and you can expect to hear from my lawyers regarding malpractice suits. The room erupted into protests, but Alexandra raised a hand. Get out, now. One by one, the doctors filed out, their heads bowed. When the last one left, Alexandra collapsed into a chair, her face buried in her hands. Leo climbed into her lap, wrapping his thin arms around her neck. It's okay, Mom, he whispered. I can hear now. That's all that matters. But Dave saw the truth in Alexandra's eyes when she looked up. It wasn't okay. She'd spent 5 years trusting people who'd let her down. 5 years of watching her son struggle while the answer was literally right in front of them. That kind of betrayal didn't heal easily. Dave finally left at 7 p.m., long after the sun had set. As he walked to his truck, Alexandra followed him out. David. He turned. She stood in the doorway, backlit by the warm glow of the house. In the shadows, she looked smaller, more human. Thank you, she said, for everything. Dave nodded. He's a good kid. Take care of him. I will. She hesitated. Can I get your number? In case Leo needs anything? Dave almost said no. He didn't belong in this world of billionaires and marble floors and doctors who charged more per hour than Dave made in a week. But then he thought of Leo's face when he'd spoken his first word, and he found himself rattling off his number. Alexandra typed it into her phone. I mean it. Anything he needs. Anything you need. Just ask. I don't need anything, Miss Morrison. Alex, she said. Call me Alex. Dave nodded and climbed into his truck. As he drove away, he glanced in the rearview mirror. Alexandra was still standing in the doorway watching him go. He didn't know it yet, but his life had just changed forever. When Dave picked up Ethan from after-school care that night, his son immediately knew something was different. "You're late," Ethan said, buckling his seatbelt. "You're never late." "Sorry, bud. Work stuff." "What kind of work stuff?" Dave glanced at his son, 6 years old, blonde hair like his mother's, eyes that still looked for her in every crowd. How could he explain what had happened today? That he'd pulled a living creature from a boy's ear and given him the gift of sound? That he'd stood in a room of doctors who'd failed and felt, for the first time in years, like he'd done something that mattered? "I helped a kid," Dave said finally. "He was in trouble, and I helped him." Ethan's eyes lit up. "Like a superhero?" Dave laughed. "Not quite, buddy." "Did you save his life?" "No, just made it better." Ethan thought about this for a moment. Mom would have liked that. The words hit Dave like a punch to the chest. He pulled over to the side of the road, hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. Sarah would have liked it. She'd always been the brave one, the one who ran toward danger while everyone else ran away. She'd been a teacher, and before that, a volunteer firefighter. She'd loved helping people. She would have been proud. "Yeah," Dave said, his voice thick. "Yeah, she would have." He pulled back onto the road and drove home, Ethan chattering beside him about Legos and homework, and a girl in his class who could burp the alphabet. Dave listened and nodded and tried not to think about the fact that, for the first time since Sarah died, he felt like himself again. Even if it was just for a day. Even if it didn't last. But it did last. The next morning, Dave's phone rang at 6 a.m. He answered groggily, expecting a client with a broken water heater. Instead, he heard Alexandra's voice. "Dave, it's Alex Morrison. I hope I'm not calling too early." Dave sat up, suddenly awake. "Is Leo okay?" "He's fine. Better than fine. He's laughing, Dave. I've never heard him laugh before. I didn't know what his laugh sounded like until today." Her voice broke, and Dave heard her take a shaky breath. "That's good," Dave said softly. "That's really good. I need to see you. Today. Can you come by?" Dave hesitated. "I've got a full schedule." "I'll pay you double, triple, please, Dave. It's important." Against his better judgment, Dave agreed. When he arrived at the Morrison estate 2 hours later, he found Alexandra waiting for him in the courtyard. She looked different, less polished, more raw. Her hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, and she wore jeans and a t-shirt instead of designer clothes. She looked, Dave thought, like a real person. "Thank you for coming," she said, shaking his hand. Her grip was firm, urgent. "I need to talk to you about something." "Okay." She led him inside, not to the sitting room, but to a home office that overlooked the valley. The walls were covered in screens displaying stock tickers, news feeds, and data charts Dave couldn't begin to understand. Alexandra gestured for him to sit. "I didn't sleep last night." "Understandable." "No, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what you said yesterday, about how medicine's become too complicated, too specialized, too focused on protocol instead of people." Dave nodded slowly. "Okay." "And I realized something." Alexandra leaned forward, her eyes intense. "I've spent my entire career building technology that's supposed to make the world better, faster, smarter. But yesterday, a man with a flashlight did more for my son than $1 billion of medical technology ever could." "I'm not sure where you're going with this. I want to change the system, Dave. I want to fix what's broken. And I want you to help me." Dave blinked. "Me?" "You. I'm a maintenance worker. You're a paramedic, a father, someone who sees people instead of problems. That's what medicine needs." Alexandra pulled up a document on one of her screens. "I've drafted a plan for a foundation, the Leo Morrison Foundation. Its mission will be to reform pediatric diagnostics, train doctors to think holistically, and provide free medical screenings to underserved communities." Dave stared at the screen, his mind reeling. That's ambitious. "I'm pledging $500 million to start, and I want you to run it." The room tilted. "Run it?" Dave repeated. "Alex, I don't know the first thing about running a foundation. You know how to help people. That's all that matters." Alexandra's voice was fierce. I've spent my whole life surrounded by people who care about money and power and prestige. But you? You helped my son because it was the right thing to do. Not for recognition, not for a reward, because you care. That's the kind of person I need. Dave shook his head. I can't. Why not? Because I have a son, a life. I can't just drop everything. Then don't drop it. Bring Ethan with you. I'll hire nannies, tutors, whatever he needs. You'll have full control over your schedule, and you'll be paid more in a year than you'd make in a lifetime fixing boilers. Dave stood abruptly, pacing toward the window. Below, he could see Leo playing in the garden, running his hands along flowers and laughing every time the wind rustled the leaves. The boy looked free. I'm not the guy you think I am, Dave said quietly. I'm not some hero. I'm just broken. I couldn't save my wife, and I've spent the last 7 years trying to figure out how to be enough for my son. I can't run a foundation. I can't... David, Alexandra's voice was soft but firm. What you did yesterday? That wasn't luck. That was skill, compassion, courage. Those are things you can't teach, and those are the things this world needs. Dave closed his eyes. He thought of Sarah, of the way she'd always believed in him, even when he didn't believe in himself, of the way she'd pushed him to be better, do better. What would she want him to do? He already knew the answer. Okay, Dave said. Alexandra's eyes widened. Okay? On one condition. I'm not running this alone. You're involved. Every step. This is your son's legacy. It should have your name on it, too. Alexandra smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached her eyes. Deal. They shook hands, and in that moment, Dave felt the weight of the last 7 years begin to lift. Maybe he couldn't save everyone, but he could start with one boy, and maybe that was enough. The first week after their agreement, Dave barely slept. He'd wake at 4 in the morning, his mind racing with lists and logistics, questions he didn't know how to answer. How do you build a medical foundation from scratch? How do you reform a system that's been broken for decades? How do you convince the world that something as simple as a flashlight and human compassion could matter more than million-dollar machines? Alexandra, it turned out, had answers to all of these questions, and she moved with the speed and precision of someone who'd built empires before breakfast. On Monday, she rented an entire floor of an office building in downtown Palo Alto. On Tuesday, she hired a team of attorneys to draft the foundation's charter. On Wednesday, she brought in architects to design mobile medical clinics. By Thursday, the Leo Morrison Foundation had a logo, a mission statement, and a staff of 12. Dave spent most of that first week feeling like he'd been dropped into the deep end of a pool without knowing how to swim. This is Rebecca Hahn, our Chief Operations Officer, Alexandra said on Friday afternoon, introducing Dave to a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who looked like she could run a small country before lunch. Rebecca, this is David Keller, our Executive Director. Rebecca extended her hand. I've heard a lot about you, Mr. Keller, the man who saved Leo Morrison with a pair of pliers and a flashlight. Dave shook her hand, acutely aware of the grease still trapped under his fingernails. It wasn't quite that dramatic. Oh, I think it was. Rebecca smiled, but her eyes were assessing him, measuring him. Alexandra tells me you want to reform pediatric diagnostics. That's a tall order. I know. Good. People who think it'll be easy are usually the ones who fail. Rebecca pulled out a tablet and tapped the screen. I've been working in healthcare administration for 20 years. I've seen a lot of foundations come and go. Most of them fail because they're built on ego, not impact. Alexandra says you're different, that you actually care. Dave glanced at Alexandra, who was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. I do care. That's why I'm here. Then we'll get along just fine. Rebecca swiped through her tablet. I've drafted a preliminary action plan. Phase 1 is mobile clinics offering free ear, nose, and throat screenings in underserved communities. Phase 2 is training programs for primary care physicians. Phase 3 is advocacy, getting legislation passed that requires more comprehensive pediatric examinations. Dave's head spun. That sounds expensive. $500 million goes a long way if you're smart about it. Rebecca looked up. But it won't last forever. We need to be sustainable. That means fundraising, partnerships, and proving our model works. We have maybe 2 years to show results before the money runs out, And donors lose interest. 2 years. Dave felt the weight of it settle on his shoulders like a physical thing. Where do we start? He asked. Alexandra stepped forward. We start with Leo. So, that evening, Dave sat in Alexandra's home office while Leo played on the floor nearby, a pair of noise-canceling headphones around his neck. The boy had been struggling with sensory overload. Every sound was too loud, too sharp, too overwhelming. The audiologist Alexandra had hired said it would take months for Leo's brain to adjust. He keeps asking to go back, Alexandra said quietly, watching her son. Back to the silence. Dave understood. It's a lot to process. He's lived his whole life one way, and now everything's different. Give him time. What if he never adjusts? What if I made things worse by letting you— Alexandra stopped herself, shaking her head. I'm sorry, that came out wrong. It's okay. You're scared. Any parent would be. Alexandra looked at him, her eyes red-rimmed. How do you do it? Raise a child alone? I have nannies and housekeepers and more money than God, and I still feel like I'm drowning half the time. You're doing it with none of that. Dave thought about the nights he'd sat in Ethan's room, watching his son sleep, wondering if he was enough, wondering if he'd ever be enough. You just do, he said finally, because the alternative is letting them down, and that's not an option. Leo looked up from his toys, his face scrunched in concentration. Dave? It was the first time the boy had said his name. Dave felt something warm bloom in his chest. Yeah, buddy. Does sound hurt you too? Dave moved to sit on the floor beside Leo. Sometimes, when things are too loud or too sudden, but your brain learns to filter it out, it gets easier. How long? Depends on the person. Could be weeks, could be months. Leo's lower lip trembled. I don't know if I can do this. Yes, you can. You know how I know? How? Because you're the bravest kid I've ever met. You lived 10 years in silence and you never gave up. This is just the next part of your story, and it's going to be hard, but you're going to make it. I promise. Leo stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. Alexandra watched them, something unreadable crossing her face. Later, after Leo had gone to bed, she cornered Dave in the hallway. He trusts you, she said. Kids are good at reading people. He knows I won't lie to him. It's more than that. Alexandra crossed her arms. He's never had a father figure. His father wasn't in the picture. It was always just us. Dave didn't know what to say to that. I'm not asking you to be his dad, Alexandra continued quickly. Thank you for being someone he can look up to. He needs that. He's got you. That's more than enough. Is it? Alexandra's voice was barely a whisper. I gave him everything money could buy, and none of it helped. You gave him 5 minutes of your time, and you changed his life. What does that say about me? It says you're human, and that you love your son. That's all that matters. Well, Alexandra's eyes glistened, but she blinked the tears away. I should let you go. Ethan's probably waiting. Dave nodded, but as he turned to leave, Alexandra called out one more time. Dave, tomorrow when you come to the office, bring Ethan. I want Leo to meet him. The next morning, Dave pulled up to the Morrison estate with Ethan in tow. His son pressed his nose against the car window, eyes wide. Whoa! This place is huge. Does a giant live here? Dave laughed. No giants, just a kid your age who's been through a lot. What happened to him? He couldn't hear for a long time, but now he can. Ethan thought about this. That must be weird. Hearing everything for the first time. Yeah, it is. So be patient with him, okay? He's still learning. Okay, Dad. Leo was waiting in the courtyard, perched on a stone bench with his noise-canceling headphones on. When he saw Ethan, he pulled them off slowly. Hi, Leo said, his voice still uncertain, still finding its rhythm. Hi, Ethan replied. I'm Ethan. My dad says you can hear now. That's cool. Leo's face brightened. It's weird. Everything's so loud. What's the loudest thing you've heard? Birds. They're really loud. I didn't know they made so much noise. Ethan grinned. Wait until you hear a dog bark. Dogs are crazy loud. And just like that, the ice broke. Within minutes, the two boys were running through the garden, Ethan pointing out sounds and Leo listening with an expression of wonder and occasional overwhelm. Dave watched from a distance, feeling something he hadn't felt in years: hope. Alexandra appeared beside him, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. She offered him one. "They're good together," she said. "Kids usually are. They don't overthink things like adults do. Ethan's a good kid. You've done well with him." Dave took a sip of coffee. "I'm doing my best. Some days that's enough, some days it's not." "Sarah would be proud." Dave froze. "How do you know about Sarah?" Alexandra had the grace to look embarrassed. "I had my assistant do a background check. I'm sorry, I know that's invasive, but when you're putting someone in charge of $500 million, I get it." Dave's voice was flat. "What else did your background check tell you?" "That you were a paramedic for 8 years. That you quit 3 weeks after your wife died. That you've been working maintenance jobs ever since, moving from place to place, never staying anywhere longer than a year." Alexandra paused. "That you've been running." "I'm not running. I'm surviving." "There's a difference?" Dave didn't answer. They stood in silence, watching the boys play. "I read about the shooting," Alexandra said finally. "Route 91. I can't imagine—" "Don't." Dave's voice was sharp. "Don't say you can't imagine. Everyone says that. And they're right. They can't. Unless you've held someone while they bled out, while they begged you to save them and you couldn't, you have no idea what it's like. So please, just don't." Alexandra nodded. "You're right. I'm sorry." More silence. The boys' laughter echoed across the courtyard. "For what it's worth," Alexandra said quietly, "I think you're brave. Not for what you did that day, but for what you've done every day since. Getting up, taking care of Ethan, showing up. That's real courage." Dave's throat tightened. He took another sip of coffee to avoid responding. They stood there for another 10 minutes, neither speaking, just watching their sons discover what friendship looked like. When it was time to leave, Ethan begged to stay longer. "Can Leo come over sometime?" Ethan asked as they walked to the car. "I don't know, bud. Leo's pretty busy." "He can come," Alexandra said. She was standing in the doorway, Leo beside her. "Anytime. Really." Leo's face lit up. "Can I, Mom? Please?" Alexandra smiled, a real smile, not the polished one Dave had seen at the office. "Of course." As Dave drove away, Ethan chattered nonstop about his new friend. Dave listened, nodding in the right places, but his mind was elsewhere. He'd spent 7 years building walls, keeping people at arm's length, telling himself it was safer that way, easier that way. But watching Ethan and Leo together, seeing the pure, uncomplicated joy on his son's face, Dave realized something. Maybe it was time to stop running. The Leo Morrison Foundation officially launched 3 weeks later with a press conference that drew media from around the world. Dave stood backstage, his hand shaking, while Alexandra went over the plan one more time. "I'll speak first," she said, adjusting her blazer. "I'll talk about Leo, about what happened, about why this matters. Then I'll introduce you. You'll say a few words about the Foundation's mission. Keep it short, keep it real, just be yourself. What if I mess up?" "You won't." "You don't know that." Alexandra placed a hand on his shoulder. "Dave, you pulled a living creature out of my son's ear with a pair of pliers. I think you can handle a microphone." Despite himself, Dave laughed. The press conference was held in the Foundation's new headquarters, a sleek modern building with floor-to-ceiling windows and a waiting room designed to feel warm and welcoming rather than clinical. Reporters packed the main hall, cameras flashing, questions shouted before Alexandra even reached the podium. Dave watched from the wings as she took the stage. She looked different under the lights, more powerful, more in control. This was her element. "Good morning," Alexandra began, her voice clear and steady. "My name is Alexandra Morrison, and I'm here to tell you about my son, Leo." For the next 10 minutes, she spoke. She told them about Leo's deafness, about the years of specialists and failed treatments, about the day a maintenance worker with a flashlight changed everything. She didn't spare the doctors, she didn't spare the system, and she didn't spare herself. "I trusted the experts," Alexandra said, her voice thick with emotion. "I trusted the protocol. I trusted that $1 billion could fix anything. But I was wrong, and my son paid the price." The room was silent. But this isn't just about Leo. It's about every child who's been failed by a system that's too focused on specialization and not enough on people. It's about parents who trust doctors only to be let down. It's about making medicine human again. She paused, letting the words sink in. Today, I'm announcing the Leo Morrison Foundation with an initial pledge of $500 million. Our mission is simple: reform pediatric diagnostics, train doctors to think holistically, and provide free medical screenings to communities that need them most. And leading this effort is the man who saved my son's life, David Keller. Dave's cue. He walked onto the stage blinded by camera flashes, his heart hammering against his ribs. The crowd was a blur of faces and voices. He reached the microphone and froze. All those people staring at him, waiting, expecting something profound, something inspiring. Dave wasn't a public speaker. He was a guy who fixed boilers. But then he saw Ethan in the front row, sitting beside Leo, both boys giving him thumbs up. And he thought of Sarah, of the way she'd always believed in him, even when he didn't believe in himself. He cleared his throat. "I'm not a doctor," Dave began. "I'm not a specialist or an expert. I'm just a dad who knows what it's like to feel helpless, to watch someone you love suffer and not know how to fix it." The crowd leaned in. "The day I met Leo, he was in pain, and I did what anyone should do. I looked, really looked, not at a diagnosis or a chart or a test result, at a kid who needed help. And that's what this foundation is about. Seeing people, not problems, not statistics, people." Dave's hands steadied. "We're not here to tear down the medical system. We're here to remind it why it exists, to help, to heal, to give a damn. And if we can do that, if we can save even one child from going through what Leo went through, then everything we do here will be worth it." The applause started slow, then built into something thunderous. Dave stepped back from the microphone, his legs weak, his heart racing. Alexandra grabbed his hand and squeezed. "You did great," she whispered. The questions came fast after that, reporters shouting over each other, cameras clicking, voices demanding answers. "Mr. Keller, what makes you qualified to run a medical foundation? Ms. Morrison, are you suing the doctors who missed Leo's condition? Is this about Leo or about publicity?" Alexandra handled most of them with practiced ease, but when one reporter asked Dave directly, "Do you really think a flashlight can change medicine?" he answered without hesitation. "No, but compassion can. And that's what we're offering. A chance to remember that behind every diagnosis is a human being. That's not revolutionary. That's basic decency. And if medicine's forgotten that, then yeah, maybe a flashlight is exactly what we need." The reporter had no follow-up to that. The foundation's first mobile clinic launched 2 weeks later in East Palo Alto, a community just miles from Silicon Valley's wealth, but worlds apart in access to healthcare. Dave spent the morning helping set up the clinic, a converted RV outfitted with examination equipment, supplies, and a team of volunteer doctors who'd agreed to donate their time. Rebecca Hahn supervised the operation with military precision, barking orders and checking schedules. "We've got 43 families scheduled today," she told Dave. "That's a lot. We need to move efficiently without making anyone feel rushed." "Got it." The first family arrived at 9 a.m., a mother with 3 children, all under the age of 8. The youngest, a girl named Maria, had been complaining of ear pain for months. Her mother, Carmen, explained through tears that she'd taken Maria to a free clinic, but they'd said it was just an ear infection and prescribed antibiotics. "She still cries at night," Carmen said. The medicine didn't help. Dr. Patel, one of the volunteer physicians, examined Maria while Dave kept the other children occupied with coloring books. After a few minutes, Dr. Patel called Dave over. "Look at this," she said, shining a light into Maria's ear. Dave looked. Deep in the canal, he could see it, a small bead, blue and shiny, lodged so far back it was almost invisible. "How long has that been in there?" Dave asked. "Could be weeks, could be months." Dr. Patel pulled out a pair of forceps. "This'll take 2 seconds." She was right. The bead came out easily, and Maria's relief was immediate. She stopped crying, her body relaxing. Carmen burst into tears. Thank you. Thank you so much. It was the first of many that day. By noon, they'd seen 20 families. By 3 p.m., 38. And by the time they closed at 6, they'd examined every single child on the schedule, and a dozen walk-ins who'd heard about the clinic from neighbors. 3 children had foreign objects in their ears. 2 had undiagnosed infections. 1 had a perforated eardrum that had been dismissed as chronic pain. All of them left with treatment plans, follow-up appointments, and parents who couldn't stop thanking the staff. Dave collapsed into a chair in the RV, exhausted but exhilarated. Rebecca sat beside him, pulling off her headset. Not bad for day 1. Not bad at all. 3 kids heard properly for the first time today because of us. 3. Rebecca shook her head. That's 3 more than most foundations accomplish in a year. Dave felt something swell in his chest, pride maybe, or purpose, something he hadn't felt in a long time. We're going to need more clinics, he said. Rebecca smiled. Already on it. I've got applications for volunteers pouring in, doctors, nurses, audiologists. Everyone wants to be part of this. Turns out people like being reminded why they went into medicine in the first place. Good. Because this is just the beginning. That night, Dave picked up Ethan from Alexandra's house. The boys had spent the afternoon together while Dave worked. He found them in the living room, building an elaborate Lego castle, while Alexandra worked on her laptop nearby. Dad! Ethan jumped up. Look what we made! The castle was impressive, complete with towers, a drawbridge, and tiny Lego knights. Nice work, guys. Leo stood, signing something with his hands. Dave didn't understand ASL, but Alexandra translated. He says he wants to come to the clinic next time, to help. Dave looked at Leo. You sure? It's a lot of work. Leo nodded enthusiastically, then spoke aloud. His speech still slow and deliberate, but improving every day. I want to help other kids like me. Then you're hired, Dave said, ruffling the boy's hair. On the drive home, Ethan was quiet, unusual for him. Dave glanced over. You okay, bud? Yeah, I was just thinking. About what? About Mom. Do you think she'd like Leo? Dave's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Yeah, Ethan, I think she'd love him. And Ms. Morrison? Dave's breath caught. What about her? Do you think Mom would like her? Dave didn't answer right away. He thought about Alexandra, the way she loved her son fiercely, the way she'd thrown herself into the foundation with everything she had, the way she'd looked at Dave when she said Sarah would be proud. Yeah, Dave said finally. I think she would. Ethan nodded, satisfied, and went back to looking out the window. But Dave couldn't shake the question. What would Sarah think of all this? Of the foundation, of Alexandra, of the way his life had changed in just a few weeks? He'd spent 7 years frozen, stuck in the moment Sarah died, unable to move forward. But now he was moving. And for the first time since that terrible night in Las Vegas, Dave felt like maybe, just maybe, he was allowed to live again. Good. The Foundation's second mobile clinic launched in Oakland, the third in San Jose. By the end of the first month, they'd screened over 200 children across 6 communities. And in every single clinic, they found something: a bead, a toy piece, an infection missed by rushed doctors, a hearing problem dismissed as behavioral. 12 children heard clearly for the first time. 12 families cried tears of relief and gratitude. 12 lives changed because someone took the time to look. The media coverage was relentless. Every major news outlet ran stories about the Foundation. Dave did interviews on morning shows, podcasts, even a segment on 60 Minutes. He hated every second of the attention, but Alexandra insisted it was necessary. People need to see this, she said. They need to know it's possible to do better. Dave understood, but it didn't make him any more comfortable with the cameras. The real reward came from the families, from the letters that poured into the Foundation's office, hundreds of them, from parents thanking them for what they'd done. From the phone calls asking when the next clinic would be, begging them to come to their community. One letter in particular stuck with Dave. It was from a mother in Fresno whose daughter, Isabella, had been deaf for 7 years. She wrote, "The doctors told us there was nothing they could do, that we should accept it and move on. But you didn't accept it. You looked. And now my daughter can hear birds singing. She can hear me say I love you. You gave us back something we thought was lost forever. How do I thank you for that?" Dave read the letter 3 times, then folded it carefully and put it in his wallet. On the hard days, and there were many, he'd pull it out and read it again. This was why they were doing it. Not for the press or the recognition or the glory. For Isabella. For Leo. For every child who deserved to be seen. Médecin. But success, Dave quickly learned, came with complications. By the end of the second month, cracks began to show. The volunteer doctors were burning out. The mobile clinics were expensive to operate. And worst of all, they'd started receiving pushback from medical organizations who viewed the foundation as a threat. Dr. Chen, Alexandra's former chief medical officer, published an op-ed in the New England Journal of Medicine titled "The Danger of Oversimplification: Why the Morrison Foundation's Approach Could Harm Medicine." Dave read it in Alexandra's office, his jaw clenching with every paragraph. While the Morrison Foundation's intentions are noble, their methods risk undermining the expertise and training that modern medicine requires. Not every medical mystery can be solved with a flashlight. By suggesting otherwise, they create unrealistic expectations and erode trust in legitimate medical professionals. Alexandra threw her copy of the journal across the room. Erode trust? They eroded trust when they missed a bug living in my son's ear for 5 years. She's scared, Dave said calmly. They all are. We're making them look bad. They made themselves look bad. I know, but that doesn't change the fact that we're threatening their world, and they're going to fight back. Alexandra sank into her chair, her hands shaking. How do we fight this? We don't. We keep doing the work. Results speak louder than op-eds. But it wasn't just the medical establishment pushing back. Parents were calling too. Angry parents whose children were deaf and would stay deaf because their conditions weren't caused by foreign objects or infections. They accused the foundation of giving false hope, of suggesting that all deaf children could be fixed. One mother called Dave directly, her voice raw with pain. My daughter has been deaf since birth, she said, and she's perfect the way she is. But now, because of your foundation, people keep asking me if I've tried getting help, like she's broken, like she needs to be fixed. You're making her feel like there's something wrong with her. Dave listened, his heart sinking. That's not what we're trying to do. But that's what's happening. You're holding up these miracle stories, and you're forgetting about kids like mine. Kids who don't need miracles. They just need acceptance. The call haunted Dave for days. He brought it up with Alexandra one evening after another long day at the office. We're hurting people, he said. People we're trying to help. Alexandra looked up from her laptop. What do you mean? Dave told her about the call, about the mother's pain, about the unintended message they were sending. Alexandra was quiet for a long time. What do? We expand the mission. We celebrate deaf culture alongside medical intervention. We make it clear that not every child needs to be fixed. Some just need to be seen and accepted exactly as they are. That's a big shift. I know, but it's the right one. Alexandra nodded slowly. Okay, let's do it. Let's build a division focused on supporting the deaf community. Resources, advocacy, education, not fixing, supporting. It'll cost money. We have money, and if we run out, I'll find more. Alexandra's eyes met his. This foundation exists to help children, all children. If we're not doing that, then we're failing. Within a week, they'd hired Dr. Maria Santos, a deaf physician and advocate, to lead the new deaf culture and community division. She came in with passion and vision, immediately pushing back against some of the foundation's messaging. You can't keep calling what you do miracles, she told Dave and Alexandra during their first meeting. Hearing isn't better than being deaf. It's just different. When you frame it as miraculous, you're saying deaf people are broken. And we're not. Dave felt the truth of her words settle in his chest. You're right. I'm sorry. Dr. Santos smiled. Don't be sorry. Be better. That's all any of us can do. Over the next few weeks, the foundation's message evolved. They still ran mobile clinics. They still screened children for treatable conditions. But they also launched programs celebrating deaf culture, offering sign language classes, and connecting deaf children with mentors and role models. The backlash from the deaf community began to soften. Slowly, parents who'd been angry started calling to thank them for listening, for adapting. for understanding that help didn't always mean cure. Leo struggled through all of it. Despite weeks of therapy, he still found the world overwhelmingly loud. He wore his noise-canceling headphones constantly, retreating into silence whenever things became too much. At school, kids teased him. They mocked the way he spoke, slow and uncertain, each word a careful construction. They imitated his voice, laughing when he flinched. One afternoon, Alexandra got a call from the principal. Leo had locked himself in a bathroom stall and refused to come out. Dave was at the office when Alexandra called him, her voice shaking. "I don't know what to do. He won't talk to me. He won't talk to anyone." "I'm coming," Dave said. He found Leo still in the bathroom, sitting on the floor with his headphones on, tears streaming down his face. The principal hovered nearby, uncertain. Dave waved her away. "Give us a minute." When they were alone, Dave sat on the floor beside Leo. He didn't say anything, just sat. After a few minutes, Leo pulled off his headphones. "I want to go back." "Back where?" "To the silence. It was easier. People didn't make fun of me when I was deaf." Dave's heart broke. "What happened today?" "Kids at school. They said I sound weird, that I talk like a robot, that I should have stayed deaf. Kids can be cruel." "I know, but they're right. I do sound weird. You sound like someone who's learning. That's not weird. That's brave." Leo shook his head. "I'm not brave. I'm just broken in a different way now." Dave was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You know what Sarah, my wife, used to tell Ethan when kids made fun of him?" Leo looked up. "What?" She'd say, "Different isn't less. It's just different." "You're not broken, Leo. You're adapting, and that's one of the hardest things a person can do. So no, you're not weird. You're extraordinary." Leo's lower lip trembled. "I miss the quiet sometimes." "I know, and that's okay. You're allowed to miss it." "Really? Really. Change is hard, even when it's good. And what you're going through, it's really hard. But you're doing it. Every day you're showing up and trying. That takes guts." Leo leaned against Dave's shoulder. They sat there on the bathroom floor, neither speaking, just existing together. Finally, Leo whispered, "Can Ethan come over tonight?" "Yeah, buddy. I'll call him." When Ethan arrived later that evening, he found Leo sitting in the garden, his headphones on, staring at the koi pond. Ethan sat beside him without a word. After a few minutes, Leo pulled off his headphones. "Kids at school say I'm weird," Leo said. Ethan shrugged. "Kids at my school say my mom died because she was stupid, that she should have run faster." Leo's eyes went wide. "That's awful." "Yeah, but they're wrong. She wasn't stupid. She was helping people. That's what she always did." "What did you do? When they said that?" "I punched one of them." "Did it help?" "No, I got suspended. And my dad cried, which made me feel worse." Ethan picked up a pebble and tossed it into the pond. "But then he told me something. He said people who hurt others are usually hurt themselves, and that I could either hurt them back or be better than them. So I'm trying to be better." Leo thought about this. "How?" "By not caring what they think. You know you're not weird. I know you're not weird. Your mom knows, Dave knows, so who cares what they think?" "But what if they're right?" Ethan looked at him seriously. "Leo, you can hear now. Like, you couldn't hear before, and now you can. That's not weird. That's amazing. And if people can't see that, then they're the weird ones." For the first time that day, Leo smiled. The two boys sat by the pond until the sun set, talking about school and Legos and the unfairness of homework. Dave and Alexandra watched from the house, neither speaking. Finally, Alexandra said, "He's good for Leo. Ethan." "Leo's good for Ethan, too. He needs a friend who gets what it's like to be different." "They're lucky to have each other." Dave nodded, and though he didn't say it aloud, he thought, "We're all lucky to have each other." Because for the first time in 7 years, Dave felt like he was part of something bigger than his grief, part of a family, fragile and imperfect, but real. And that was enough. 3 months into the Foundation's operation, Alexandra made a decision that would change everything. She scheduled a press conference without telling Dave first, and when he found out, he knew immediately that something big was coming. "What are you planning?" he asked, cornering her in her office the morning of the conference. Alexandra looked up from the speech she'd been writing, her eyes tired but determined. Something I should have done from the start. That's not an answer. You'll see. Trust me. But Dave had learned that when Alexandra said trust me in that particular tone, it usually meant she was about to do something dramatic. He wasn't wrong. The press conference was held at the Foundation's headquarters, the main hall packed even tighter than the launch event. Dave stood backstage again, but this time Alexandra hadn't asked him to speak. She told him to just watch. When she took the stage, the cameras immediately focused on her. Alexandra Morrison, tech billionaire, philanthropist, mother. She commanded attention without trying. 3 months ago, Alexandra began, I stood here and told you about my son Leo, about how he'd been failed by a medical system I'd trusted completely, about how a maintenance worker with a $5 flashlight did what 50 specialists couldn't do. The crowd was silent, waiting. Today, I'm here to tell you something else, something harder. Alexandra's voice wavered slightly, but she pushed through. I'm here to tell you that I was part of the problem. Murmurs rippled through the audience. For 10 years, I threw money at Leo's deafness. I hired the best doctors, bought the best equipment, pursued every treatment available. But I never once asked the simple question that Dave Keller asked. Did anyone actually look? Alexandra paused, her hands gripping the podium. I trusted credentials over curiosity. I trusted expensive over effective. I trusted the system because the system told me to trust it, and my son suffered because of that blind trust. Dave felt his chest tighten. This wasn't just a speech about medicine. This was a confession. But here's the thing about systems, Alexandra continued. They don't change unless someone forces them to, and that's why I'm here today, to force change. She pulled out a folder and held it up. In my hand, I have documentation of every medical examination Leo underwent in the last 5 years. Every test, every diagnosis, every dismissal of his complaints about ear pain. 14 times, my son told doctors he was hurting. 14 times, they wrote it off as behavioral, as psychological, as anything except what it actually was, a foreign body causing him physical pain. The cameras clicked frantically. I've spent the last month working with medical attorneys and patient advocacy groups, and today I'm announcing that I'm filing malpractice suits against 6 medical institutions and 12 individual physicians who treated Leo. The room erupted, reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, the noise was deafening. Alexandra raised her hand for silence. I'm not doing this for money. Any settlements will go directly to the foundation and to other families whose children have been similarly failed. I'm doing this because accountability matters. Because if we want medicine to change, we have to show there are consequences for not caring enough to look. Dave watched from backstage, his mind racing. Alexandra hadn't mentioned this to him, hadn't warned him. This was going to create a firestorm. I know what you're thinking, Alexandra said, her voice cutting through the chaos. You're thinking this is vindictive, that I'm attacking hardworking doctors who did their best. But here's what I know, their best wasn't good enough. And until we acknowledge that, until we hold people accountable for cutting corners and dismissing patients, nothing will change. She looked directly into the nearest camera. My son was lucky. He had a mother with resources and a chance encounter with someone who cared enough to act. But how many children don't have that? How many kids are suffering right now because the system is too broken, too rushed, too arrogant to look beyond the obvious? Alexandra's voice rose with passion. So yes, I'm suing, and yes, I'm angry, and yes, I'm going to use every dollar, every connection, every ounce of influence I have to make sure what happened to Leo never happens to another child. Because that's what parents do. We fight for our kids, even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable, even when the whole world tells us to back down. The applause started slowly, then built into something thunderous. But Dave noticed that not everyone was clapping. Some of the reporters looked skeptical. Some looked disapproving. This was going to be messy. Alexandra fielded questions for another 20 minutes, her answers sharp and unapologetic. When someone asked if she worried about damaging doctors' reputations, she didn't hesitate. I'm more worried about children's lives than doctors' reputations. Next question. When the conference ended, Dave found Alexandra in her office, slumped in her chair, looking exhausted. You should have told me, he said. I know. Why didn't you? Alexandra looked up at him. Because you would have tried to talk me out of it. You would have said it was too aggressive, too risky, that it would hurt the Foundation's reputation. You're right, I would have said all of that. And would you have been wrong? Dave sat down across from her. I don't know, maybe not. But this is going to get ugly, Alex. The medical community is going to come after us hard. Donors might pull out, volunteers might quit. Are you ready for that? I don't care, I'm done being polite about this. I'm done pretending like what happened to Leo was just an unfortunate oversight. It was negligence, and someone needs to say it. Dave studied her face. He saw the anger there, raw and real, but underneath it, he saw something else. Fear. The fear of a mother who'd almost lost her child and was still processing that trauma. Okay, Dave said finally. Alexandra blinked. Okay? You're the boss. If you think this is the right move, then I'm with you, but we need to be prepared for the fallout. I am prepared. Are you? Dave leaned forward. Because when those lawsuits go public, the media is going to dig into everything. Your past, my past, the Foundation's finances. They're going to look for any excuse to discredit us. Let them look. We've got nothing to hide. Everyone's got something to hide, Alex. The words hung between them. Alexandra's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? Dave hesitated. He'd been carrying something for weeks now, something that had been gnawing at him. Maybe it was time to get it out. When you did that background check on me, did you find out why I really quit being a paramedic? Alexandra frowned. You quit because of Sarah, because you couldn't handle working in emergency medicine after what happened. That's part of it, but there's more. Dave took a deep breath. The night Sarah died, I was on call. I was supposed to be working that shift, but I'd asked for time off because Ethan had a school thing. Another paramedic covered for me. Dave, his name was Marcus, good guy, 3 kids of his own. He was the one who responded when the shooting started. He was the one who tried to save Sarah. Dave's voice cracked. And he couldn't. None of them could. There were too many people, too much chaos. Sarah bled out waiting for transport to the hospital. Well, Alexandra's face softened. That wasn't your fault. I know, my therapist has told me that 1,000 times. But here's the thing, Marcus quit too. Couldn't handle the guilt of not being able to save everyone that night. Last I heard, he was working construction in Arizona. And every time I think about the Foundation, about what we're doing, I think about him. About all the good people who left medicine because the system broke them. What are you saying? I'm saying we need to be careful. We're going after doctors, but most of them aren't villains. They're just people working in a broken system. And if we're not careful, we're going to break more of them. Alexandra was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, So what do you want me to do? Drop the lawsuits? No, file them, hold people accountable. But also remember that we're trying to fix a system, not destroy the people working in it. There's a difference. Alexandra nodded slowly. You're right. I've been so angry, I forgot about that. She rubbed her face. How do we do both? How do we hold people accountable and still show compassion? I don't know, but we'll figure it out, together. They sat in silence for a few minutes, both lost in thought. Finally, Alexandra spoke. Dave, can I ask you something personal? Sure. Do you ever wish you could go back to before Sarah died? To when life was simple? Dave thought about it. Every day. But then I think about what I'd be missing. Watching Ethan grow up. The work we're doing here. Meeting you and Leo. He met her eyes. I can't have Sarah back. But I can choose to live a life that would make her proud. That's enough. Alexandra's eyes glistened. I envy that. I'm still so angry about what happened to Leo. I don't know how to let it go. You don't have to let it go. You just have to decide what you're going to do with it. Use it to fuel change, not just destruction. When did you get so wise? Dave laughed. I'm not wise. I'm just a guy who's made a lot of mistakes and learned a few things along the way. The lawsuits went public the next day, and just as Dave predicted, the backlash was immediate and brutal. Medical organizations issued statements condemning Alexandra. The American Medical Association called the suits a dangerous precedent that will drive doctors away from treating complex cases. Several prominent physicians appeared on news programs to defend their colleagues. Miss Morrison is weaponizing her wealth to attack hardworking doctors, one surgeon said on CNN. This isn't about justice, it's about revenge. The foundation's phones rang non-stop with angry calls. 3 major donors withdrew their support. 2 volunteer doctors quit, saying they couldn't be part of an organization that was anti-physician. Rebecca Hahn looked like she hadn't slept in days. This is bad, Dave, really bad. We're losing support faster than we can replace it. How bad? We've lost almost $2 million in pledged donations, and that's just in the first 48 hours. Dave felt his stomach drop. Can we survive that? In the short term, yes. Alexandra's initial pledge keeps us solvent. But long term, we need community support. We need donors to believe in what we're doing, and right now we're losing that battle. Dave found Alexandra in the conference room, surrounded by attorneys going over legal documents. She looked up when he entered. Can we talk? Dave asked. Alexandra excused herself and followed him to his office. As soon as the door closed, Dave said, We're bleeding donors. People are pulling support. I know. This could sink us. I know that too. And you're okay with it? Alexandra's eyes flashed. No, I'm not okay with it, but I'm not backing down either. Those doctors failed my son. Someone needs to hold them accountable. Even if it costs the foundation everything? Yes, Alexandra's voice was firm. Because if we back down now, we're sending a message that money matters more than principle. That we'll compromise when things get hard, and I won't do that. Dave understood. He even admired her conviction, but he also knew they needed to do something to stop the bleeding. What if we reframe it? He suggested. Reframe what? The narrative. Right now the story is angry billionaire attacks doctors. But what if we make it about something bigger? About systemic change, not individual blame? Alexandra considered this. How? Dave thought for a moment. We go on offense, we give an interview, both of us, where we explain that we're not anti-doctor. We're pro-patient. We talk about the volunteers who work with us, the good doctors who get it. We show that this isn't about tearing down medicine, it's about building it back better. You think that'll work? It's worth a try. Right now we're letting other people control the narrative. We need to take it back. Alexandra nodded. Okay, set it up. The interview aired on 60 Minutes the following Sunday. Dave sat beside Alexandra in the studio, bright lights in his eyes, cameras trained on them both. The correspondent, Leslie Stahl, wasted no time getting to the point. Ms. Morrison, you've filed malpractice suits against 12 doctors and 6 medical institutions. Some people are saying you're waging war on the medical profession. What's your response? Alexandra met the camera's gaze steadily. I'm not waging war on doctors. I'm waging war on complacency, on a system that values efficiency over thoroughness, on a culture that teaches doctors to trust test results over their own observations. But these lawsuits, aren't they going to make doctors more defensive, more likely to practice defensive medicine? Maybe. But the alternative is accepting that what happened to my son is just the cost of doing business. And I won't accept that. Leslie turned to Dave. Mr. Keller, you were a paramedic before you became a maintenance worker. Do you think Miss Morrison's approach is fair to the medical professionals who did their best? Dave chose his words carefully. I think most doctors go into medicine for the right reasons. They want to help people. But somewhere along the way, the system grinds them down. They're overworked, underpaid, and forced to see too many patients in too little time. So they start cutting corners. They start relying on protocols instead of instincts, and patients suffer. So you're blaming the system, not the doctors? I'm saying the system and the doctors are both responsible. We can't fix one without addressing the other. Leslie leaned forward. The foundation has lost significant donor support since the lawsuits were announced. Do you regret the decision? Alexandra answered without hesitation. No. If people only support us when we're polite and non-threatening, then they don't really believe in our mission. We're here to disrupt a broken system. That's never comfortable. Even if it costs you everything? Even then. The interview continued for another 20 minutes, covering the foundation's work, Leo's recovery, and their vision for the future. When it aired, the response was mixed but better than Dave had hoped. Some viewers sided with them, Others still thought they were too aggressive. But at least people were talking about the real issues: systemic failures, overworked doctors, the need for reform. Donations started trickling back in. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. A retired physician in Oregon sent $5,000 with a note. "I've seen what you're talking about. Keep fighting." It wasn't enough to replace what they'd lost, but it was a start. While the legal and public relations battles raged, life at the foundation continued. Mobile clinics kept running. Children kept getting screened. And slowly, quietly, they started to see the impact of their work. A mother in Sacramento wrote to say her daughter's chronic headaches had disappeared after they removed a small piece of eraser from her ear canal. A teacher in Stockton reported that 3 students in her class could suddenly hear clearly after visiting the foundation's clinic. A pediatrician in Los Angeles called to say she'd started using a simple otoscope exam as standard practice after hearing about the foundation's work, and had already caught 2 cases of foreign objects she would have missed otherwise. The stories kept coming, each one a small victory, each one proof that what they were doing mattered. But the biggest change came from an unexpected source. 6 weeks after the lawsuits were filed, Dr. Elizabeth Chen, Alexandra's former chief medical officer and one of the named defendants, called the foundation. Rebecca took the call and immediately transferred it to Dave. "Mr. Keller, this is Dr. Chen. I'm sure you remember me." Dave's jaw tightened. "I do. I'm calling to ask for a meeting with you and Miss Morrison. I know I have no right to ask, but I'm asking anyway." Dave wanted to say no. This was the woman who'd dismissed Leo's complaints 14 times, who'd written them off as behavioral issues, who'd been so arrogant she couldn't see what was right in front of her. But something in her voice stopped him. She sounded broken. "I'll talk to Alex," Dave said, "but I'm not making any promises." When he told Alexandra about the call, her first instinct was to refuse. "Why would I meet with her? So she can try to talk me out of the lawsuit? So she can make excuses?" Maybe. Or maybe she's ready to take responsibility. She had 5 years to take responsibility. And maybe now she is ready. Dave met Alexandra's eyes. "We're trying to change hearts and minds, right? That doesn't happen if we refuse to listen when someone wants to change." Alexandra was silent for a long moment. Finally, she said, "Fine, set it up, but you're coming with me." Wouldn't miss it. They met at a coffee shop in downtown Palo Alto, neutral territory. Dr. Chen arrived early, already seated at a corner table when Dave and Alexandra walked in. She stood when she saw them, her face pale, hands trembling slightly. "Thank you for coming," Dr. Chen said. Alexandra didn't sit down immediately. She just stood there, staring at the woman who'd failed her son. "You have 5 minutes," Alexandra said coldly. Dr. Chen nodded. "I deserve that." She gestured to the chairs. "Please, sit." They sat. Dave positioned himself slightly between the 2 women, ready to intervene if things got heated. Dr. Chen took a breath. "I've spent the last 6 weeks thinking about Leo, about every examination I did, every note I wrote, every time he pointed to his ear and I dismissed it as frustration. And," Alexandra's voice was ice, "and you were right, about everything. I failed him. I was so focused on the big picture, the neurological tests, the genetic factors, the research, that I stopped seeing the boy in front of me. I stopped being a doctor and became a technician." Alexandra said nothing. "I've been practicing medicine for 23 years, Dr. Chen continued. I thought I was good at it. I thought I cared about my patients. But the truth is, I'd become numb. I saw so many cases, so many patients, that I stopped treating them as individuals. They became problems to solve, puzzles to figure out." "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" Alexandra asked. "No. Nothing I say can make what I did better. But I want you to know that I've resigned from my position at Stanford. I'm taking a sabbatical to figure out if I even want to continue practicing medicine." Dave leaned forward. "Why are you telling us this?" Dr. Chen looked at him. "Because you were right too, Mr. Keller. The system is broken. And I was part of the problem. I want to be part of the solution instead." "How?" Dave asked. "I don't know yet, but I'm hoping you'll help me figure it out." Dr. Chen pulled out a folder. "I've been going through my old cases, looking for patterns. For other times, I might have missed something obvious. And I found 3 cases. 3 children I treated over the last 5 years who complained of symptoms I dismissed. I've reached out to their families, offered to do follow-up exams. 2 of them agreed. She slid the folder across the table. Alexandra opened it, scanning the documents inside. You found problems, Alexandra said, her voice softer now. In both cases, yes. One child had fluid buildup that had gone unnoticed. Another had mild hearing loss that I'd attributed to genetic factors, but was actually caused by chronic untreated infections. Jesus, Dave muttered. I know. Dr. Chen's voice cracked. I know. And I have to live with that, but I'm trying to do better. I'm trying to fix what I broke. Alexandra closed the folder and looked at Dr. Chen. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then she said, My lawsuit stands. You understand that? I do. But if you're serious about changing, about being part of the solution, then the foundation could use someone with your experience, someone who knows how the system works and where it's failing. Dr. Chen's eyes widened. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a chance to prove you meant what you said, to help us train other doctors, to teach them not to make the mistakes you made. Alexandra's voice was firm. But if you screw this up, if you fall back into old patterns, I will personally make sure you never practice medicine again. Are we clear? Crystal clear. Then welcome to the team. Dr. Chen's addition to the foundation changed the dynamic in unexpected ways. She brought credibility they hadn't had before. A respected physician publicly admitting she'd been wrong and working to fix it. Medical organizations that had condemned them suddenly became more willing to listen. More importantly, she brought insight into how to reach other doctors. She developed training programs that didn't just teach techniques, but forced physicians to confront their own biases and blind spots. The problem isn't that doctors don't know how to examine a patient, Dr. Chen explained during one training session Dave observed. The problem is that we've been trained to trust technology over observation, to value data over instinct. We need to relearn how to see. The training sessions were intense. Doctors were presented with case studies, including Leo's, and asked to identify where the system had failed. Some got defensive. Others broke down in tears, recognizing their own mistakes in the examples. But slowly, minds began to change. A pediatrician from San Francisco took the training and went back to her practice, where she immediately found a small toy lodged in a 3-year-old's ear, something she admitted she would have missed before. An ENT specialist in Sacramento redesigned his examination protocol after attending one of Dr. Chen's workshops. Word spread. More doctors signed up for training. The Foundation's mobile clinics started getting volunteers from the very institutions that had initially condemned them. Dave watched it all unfold with a mixture of pride and disbelief. They were actually doing it, actually changing minds. But he also saw the toll it was taking on Alexandra. She was working 16-hour days, running on coffee and determination. The lawsuits were draining her emotionally, even as she insisted they were necessary. And Leo was still struggling to adjust to his new reality. One evening, after everyone else had gone home, Dave found Alexandra in her office, staring at her laptop screen with glazed eyes. You need to go home, Dave said. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're running yourself into the ground. Alexandra looked up at him. I can't stop, Dave. The moment I stop, I'll think about all the time I wasted, all the years Leo suffered while I threw money at the wrong solutions. If I keep moving, I don't have to think about it. Dave sat down across from her. You're allowed to grieve, Alex. For the time you lost. For the mistakes you made. You're allowed to be human. Being human doesn't change anything. No, but it keeps you sane. Dave leaned back in his chair. You want to know what Sarah used to tell me when I got like this? When I'd work myself to exhaustion trying to save everyone? What? She'd say, you can't pour from an empty cup. I never understood what she meant until after she died, but she was right. If you don't take care of yourself, you'll have nothing left to give. And Leo needs you whole, not burnt out. Alexandra's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to do this, Dave. I don't know how to be enough for him. He's struggling at school. He's overwhelmed all the time, and I don't know how to help him. All the money in the world, and I still can't fix this. You can't fix it because it's not about fixing. It's about being there. Showing up, listening. That's all any parent can do. What if it's not enough? Then it's not enough. But it's better than running yourself into the ground trying to be perfect. Alexandra wiped her eyes. How did you get so good at this? Practice. And a lot of therapy. Dave smiled. Seriously, Alex. Take tomorrow off. Spend the day with Leo. Let Rebecca and Dr. Chen and me handle things for once. The foundation won't collapse if you take a break. Promise? Promise. Alexandra nodded. Okay, one day. But that's it. We'll see. The next day, Alexandra did something she hadn't done in months. She turned off her phone. She and Leo spent the entire day together, just the two of them. They went to the park. They got ice cream. They sat by the bay and watched the boats. Leo was quieter than usual, his headphones on for most of the day. But when they sat down on a bench overlooking the water, he pulled them off. Mom? Yeah, baby? Do you wish I'd stayed deaf? Alexandra's breath caught. What? No, why would you think that? Leo shrugged. Because when I was deaf, you didn't have to worry about me so much. You knew how to help me, but now you don't know what to do. Alexandra felt like she'd been punched. Leo, I never knew what to do. I was just pretending. And I'm sorry if I made you feel like I wished you were different. I don't. I'm learning too, just like you are. It's hard, Mom, hearing everything. People are so loud and mean, and I don't know how to make it stop. I know, baby. I know. Alexandra pulled him close. But you don't have to do it alone. We'll figure it out together. You and me and Dave and Ethan. We're a team now. Leo leaned against her. I like Dave. He doesn't treat me like I'm broken. You're not broken. You never were. Then why did you try to fix me for so long? The question hung in the air, heavy and true. Alexandra didn't have a good answer. She'd spent 10 years trying to make Leo hear because she thought that's what he needed, because society told her deafness was something to overcome, because she'd been so focused on the solution that she'd forgotten to ask if Leo even wanted to be fixed. I'm sorry, Alexandra whispered. I was wrong. I should have listened to you more, asked what you wanted instead of deciding for you. It's okay, Mom. You were trying to help. But I should have done better. They sat in silence for a while, watching the boats glide across the water. Finally, Leo said, Mom, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you like Dave? Alexandra blinked. What? Do you like him? Like him? Leo, because I think he likes you, and I think you like him. And that would be okay. If you did. Alexandra felt her face heat up. Where is this coming from? You smile more when he's around, and you look at him the way other moms look at their husbands. Ethan noticed too. Ethan, you two have been talking about this? Leo grinned. Maybe. Alexandra didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Leo, Dave and we're colleagues, friends. That's all. But you could be more. It's complicated. Why? Because, Alexandra searched for the right words. Because his wife died, and he's still healing, and I don't want to complicate his life. But what if he wants it to be complicated? What if he likes you too? Alexandra looked at her son, at his hopeful expression, and felt something shift in her chest. When had he gotten so perceptive? When had he started caring about her happiness instead of just his own? I'll think about it, Alexandra said finally. Good. Because you deserve to be happy, Mom. And so does Dave. And I think you'd make each other happy. Alexandra hugged him tight. This boy who'd lived 10 years in silence and still somehow understood people better than she did. When did you get so wise? She asked. I don't know. Maybe hearing unlocked my brain or something. Alexandra laughed, and for the first time in months, it felt real. That night, after dropping Leo off at home, Alexandra found herself driving to Dave's house. She hadn't planned it, hadn't called ahead. She just drove. When she knocked on the door, Dave answered in sweatpants and an old t-shirt, clearly ready for bed. Alex, is everything okay? I don't know, Alexandra said honestly. Can I come in? Dave stepped aside. Of course. His house was small, cluttered with Ethan's toys and school projects. Nothing like Alexandra's pristine estate, but it felt warm, lived in, real. "Ethan's asleep," Dave said, gesturing toward the hallway. "You want some tea or something?" "No, I just—" Alexandra sat on the couch, suddenly unsure why she'd come. "I talked to Leo today, about a lot of things." "That's good. You needed that. He asked me if I liked you." Dave froze. "He what?" "He asked if I liked you. Apparently he and Ethan have been conspiring." Despite everything, Dave laughed. "Kids, they have no filter. He thinks we'd be good together, that we make each other happy." Dave sat down slowly, keeping a careful distance between them. "Alex, I know it's complicated. I know you're still healing from Sarah. I know this isn't the right time. I know all of that." Alexandra looked at him. "But he's not wrong. You do make me happy, happier than I've been in years, and I don't know what to do with that." Dave was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Sarah's been gone for 7 years, and for most of those 7 years I was just existing, going through the motions, trying to be a good dad for Ethan, but I wasn't really living. And now? Now I feel alive again, because of the foundation, because of the work, because of you and Leo." Dave met her eyes. "But I'm terrified, Alex. Terrified of letting someone in again, terrified of losing them, terrified that I'm not ready." "What if you never feel ready?" "Then I guess I'll die alone." Alexandra reached out and took his hand. "Or you could take a chance. See what happens. No pressure, no expectations, just see." Dave looked down at their joined hands. He thought about Sarah, about the life they'd built together, about the promise he'd made to her in the hospital, knowing she was dying. "I'll take care of Ethan. I'll be okay. I promise." He'd kept half that promise. He'd taken care of Ethan. But he hadn't been okay. Not really. Maybe it was time to try. "Okay," Dave said quietly. "Let's see." Alexandra smiled, and in that moment something shifted between them. Not love, not yet, but the possibility of it. The beginning of something neither of them had expected, but both desperately needed. They sat on the couch for another hour, talking about everything and nothing, about their fears and hopes, about the foundation and their children, about the future they were building together, one day at a time. When Alexandra finally left, Dave stood in the doorway and watched her drive away. For the first time since Sarah died, he felt something other than grief when he thought about the future. He felt hope, and that was enough. The weeks that followed Alexandra's late-night visit brought a shift so subtle that at first, neither Dave nor Alexandra acknowledged it out loud. But it was there in the small moments, the way their hands would brush when passing documents, the way Alexandra's eyes would seek him out across crowded rooms, the way Dave found himself checking his phone, hoping for her messages. They were careful. Neither wanted to rush into something that could complicate their work or hurt their children. But the pull was undeniable, and both Leo and Ethan noticed long before the adults were ready to admit anything had changed. "Dad's smiling more," Ethan observed one morning while Dave made breakfast. "Like, a lot more." "I smile," Dave protested, flipping pancakes. "Not like this. This is different. This is like when you look at pictures of Mom and you're remembering the good stuff instead of being sad." Dave paused, spatula in midair. His son was 7 years old and already more perceptive than most adults. "I'm just happy with the work we're doing. The foundation's making a real difference." "Uh-huh. And Ms. Morrison has nothing to do with it? When did you get so nosy?" Ethan grinned. "Leo and I made a bet. I said you'd ask her out by Christmas. He said Valentine's Day. So really, it's in your best interest to prove me right. You two are trouble. We're helpful. There's a difference." Despite himself, Dave laughed. Maybe the kids were onto something. Maybe it was time to stop pretending this was just a professional relationship. But before Dave could figure out what to do about his feelings, the foundation faced its biggest challenge yet. It started with a phone call to the foundation's hotline. A mother from Fresno named Maria Gonzalez had seen the mobile clinic schedule and noticed they weren't planning to visit her area. She called, desperate, explaining that her 14-year-old daughter, Sophia, hadn't been able to hear properly for 2 years. "The doctors say it's genetic," Maria explained. her voice breaking. They say there's nothing they can do, but I see how she holds her head like something hurts. And I remember that boy, Leo Morrison, how everyone said his deafness was genetic too. Please, can someone just look? Rebecca brought the call to Dave's attention. It's a 6-hour drive to Fresno, and we're not scheduled to be in that area for another 3 months. But something about this mother's voice. Dave listened to the recording. He heard the desperation, the same tone he'd heard in Alexandra's voice that first day when she'd begged him to stay and make sure Leo was okay. "I'll go," Dave said. "Dave, you can't personally respond to every call. We'd need to send a full team, get the mobile unit. Then we do that. We make room in the schedule." "Isn't this exactly why we started the foundation, for kids like Sophia?" Rebecca sighed. "You're right. I'll call the mother back and set something up for this weekend." But when Rebecca called Maria back, there was a problem. Sophia had suddenly taken a turn for the worse. She was running a fever, complaining of severe pain, and had become disoriented. "The local ER sent her home," Maria sobbed. "They said it's just a viral infection, but she's getting worse. I don't know what to do." Dave made a decision that would later be called either incredibly brave or incredibly reckless, depending on who was telling the story. He packed his old paramedic bag, the one he'd kept in his closet all these years, threw it in his truck, and started driving. He called Alexandra on the way. "Dave, what are you doing?" Alexandra's voice was sharp with concern. "You can't just drive 6 hours to examine a patient. You're not licensed. If something goes wrong, then something goes wrong. But I can't sit here knowing a kid is suffering when I might be able to help." "Dave, Alex, if this was Leo, what would you want someone to do?" Silence on the other end. Then, "I'm coming with you." "You don't have to." "I know, but I'm coming anyway. Pick me up in 10 minutes. They drove through the night, the highways mostly empty, the truck's headlights cutting through darkness. Alexandra brought coffee and sandwiches, though neither of them ate much. They were both too anxious. "Tell me about Sarah," Alexandra said somewhere around hour 3, when the silence had become too heavy. Dave kept his eyes on the road. "Why?" "Because I want to understand. I want to know the person who shaped you into who you are." Dave was quiet for so long that Alexandra thought he might not answer. Then he said, "She was a fighter, the kind of person who saw someone in trouble and ran toward them instead of away. She taught 3rd grade, but on weekends she volunteered with the fire department. She was fearless. You loved her very much." "I did. I do." Dave's hands tightened on the wheel. People think grief fades over time, but it doesn't. It just changes shape. Some days I can think about her and smile. Other days it hits me like it just happened, like I'm getting that phone call all over again. "What did they tell you when they called?" "They said there'd been an incident at a concert, mass casualties, that Sarah had been transported to University Medical Center and I needed to get there immediately." Dave's voice was flat, emotionless, the tone of someone reciting facts to avoid feeling them. "By the time I got there, she was in surgery. They'd found her under 2 other people who'd been trying to shield her. She'd been shot 3 times, chest, abdomen, and shoulder." Alexandra reached over and placed her hand on his arm. "She made it through surgery," Dave continued. "The doctors said it was touch and go, but she was stable. I sat with her in ICU for 6 hours. She was unconscious, on a ventilator, but she was alive. I kept thinking she'd pull through. She was tough. She always pulled through. But she didn't. No, her blood pressure dropped suddenly around 3 a.m. Internal bleeding they'd missed. They rushed her back to surgery, but..." Dave trailed off. "The surgeon told me they'd done everything they could. I didn't believe him. I knew those doctors. I'd worked with some of them. I kept thinking if I'd been there, if I'd been the one treating her, I would have seen something they missed. I would have saved her." "Dave, you couldn't have..." "I know. Logically, I know. But knowing and feeling are different things." Dave finally looked at Alexandra. "For years I was angry. At the shooter, at the doctors, at God, at Sarah for being there in the first place, and mostly at myself for not being there to save her. What changed?" "Ethan. He started asking questions about his mom, started asking if she was proud of him, and I realized I was so busy being angry that I was forgetting to honor her. Sarah wouldn't want me to spend the rest of my life drowning in guilt. She'd want me to live, to find joy again, to teach our son that love doesn't end with death. Alexandra was quiet for a long moment. Is that what you're doing now? With the foundation? With me? Dave considered the question. I think I'm trying to. It's scary as hell, and most days I don't know if I'm doing it right, but yeah, I'm trying. For what it's worth, I think Sarah would be proud of you, of the man you've become, of the work you're doing. I hope so. Dave reached over and squeezed Alexandra's hand. Thank you for coming with me tonight, for understanding. We're in this together, Dave, whatever this is. They arrived in Fresno just after 3 a.m. Maria Gonzalez met them at the door of a small house in a working-class neighborhood. Her eyes were red from crying, her hands shaking. Thank God you're here. Sophia's fever is over 104. She keeps saying her head hurts. The ER sent us home with Tylenol, but nothing's working. Dave grabbed his bag and followed Maria to Sophia's bedroom. The girl was lying in bed, her face flushed, sweat soaking through her sheets. When Dave approached, she didn't respond to his voice. Sophia, Dave said gently, touching her shoulder. My name is Dave. I'm here to help. Can you hear me? Sophia's eyes fluttered open, but they were unfocused. She mumbled something incoherent. Dave pulled out his flashlight and checked her pupils. They were sluggish but reactive. He checked her ears, and what he saw made his blood run cold. The right ear canal was inflamed and swollen, but that wasn't the worst part. Dave could see what looked like a mass, dark, irregular, definitely not normal anatomy. Alex, call 911, Dave said, his voice urgent. Tell them we have a 14-year-old girl with possible mastoiditis and signs of systemic infection. We need immediate transport. Alexandra was already on her phone. Dave turned to Maria. How long has she been like this? The confusion started this afternoon. The fever's been climbing since yesterday. And no one at the ER checked her ears? They looked, but they said they didn't see anything unusual. Dave bit back a curse. Mastoiditis, an infection of the bone behind the ear, could spread to the brain if left untreated. It was serious, potentially fatal, and completely treatable if caught early. We need to get her to a hospital now. The infection's spreading. The ambulance arrived within 15 minutes. Dave rode with Sophia, monitoring her vitals while the paramedics worked. Alexandra followed in the truck with Maria. At the hospital, the ER doctor took one look at Sophia's ear and immediately ordered a CT scan. Dave explained what he'd found, showing the doctor the photos he'd taken with his phone. You're the guy from the Morrison Foundation, the doctor said, recognition dawning. The one who found that kid with the larva. That's me. Well, you might have saved this girl's life if that infection had gone another day or two. The doctor didn't need to finish the sentence. Sophia was admitted immediately and started on IV antibiotics. Within hours, her fever began to drop. Within 24 hours, she was conscious and coherent enough to thank Dave herself. My mom says you drove all night to help me, Sophia said, her voice weak but steady. Your mom loves you very much. She knew something was wrong, and she didn't give up. That's what saved you. The doctors at the ER said I was fine. They were wrong. It happens. But you're going to be okay now. Sophia looked at him with tears in her eyes. Will I hear again? Really hear? The infection damaged some of the structures in your ear, but the doctors here are confident you'll regain most of your hearing once the inflammation goes down. It'll take time and probably some therapy, but yes, you'll hear. Sophia started crying. Maria, standing beside the bed, gripped her daughter's hand. Thank you, Maria whispered to Dave. Thank you for not giving up on her. Outside in the hallway, Alexandra waited. When Dave emerged from Sophia's room, she handed him a cup of coffee. She's going to be okay, Dave said. I heard. Alexandra studied his face. You look exhausted. I feel it. Come on, let's find a hotel. Get some sleep. We can drive back tomorrow. They found a cheap motel near the hospital, 2 rooms side by side. Dave collapsed onto his bed fully clothed and was asleep within minutes. He woke 6 hours later to knocking on his door. Alexandra stood there with takeout bags and a serious expression. We need to talk, she said. They sat at the small table in Dave's room, picking at Chinese food while Alexandra pulled out her tablet. While you were sleeping, I've been thinking about what happened last night. About Sophia. About how many other kids are out there right now with symptoms being dismissed. Alexandra swiped through screens. I want to expand the foundation, not just mobile clinics, but a nationwide hotline, staffed by trained nurses and doctors who can provide immediate consultation. And I want to create a network of physicians willing to do emergency house calls for cases like this. Dave set down his chopsticks. That's ambitious and expensive. I have the money. What I need is your approval. You're the executive director. This is your call. It's not just my call, Alex. This is your foundation, your vision. No, it's ours. Alexandra's eyes were intense. We're partners in this, Dave. Equal partners. And I need to know you're on board before we move forward. Dave thought about Sophia, about how close she'd come to dying because no one took her mother's concerns seriously. He thought about all the other children out there, suffering right now because the system was too broken to catch them. I'm on board, Dave said. Let's do it. Alexandra smiled. Good. Because I already started making calls. Of course you did. They spent the next 2 hours planning. By the time they checked out of the motel, they had a framework for what would become the Morrison Emergency Response Network, a 24/7 hotline connecting families with medical professionals who actually listened. The drive home was quieter than the drive out. Both of them were exhausted, running on adrenaline and caffeine. About an hour from Palo Alto, Alexandra broke the silence. Dave, can I ask you something? Sure. Last night, when you were working on Sophia, you were different, more confident, more alive. I realized I'd never seen you in your element before. Not really. Being a paramedic was a long time ago. But you're still good at it, better than good. You were meant to do this kind of work. Alexandra paused. Do you ever regret leaving emergency medicine? Dave was quiet for a long time. Every day. But I also know I wasn't ready to go back. Not after Sarah. I would have burned out. Hurt people by being too broken to help them properly. And now? Now I think maybe I'm finding my way back. Just in a different form. Dave glanced at her. The foundation lets me use those skills without the trauma of working in emergency rooms. I can help people without reliving the worst night of my life every shift. So we're both healing then. You from loss, me from guilt. Guess so. They pulled into Alexandra's driveway just as the sun was setting. Leo and Ethan were playing in the front yard, supervised by Mrs. Chen. When they saw the truck, both boys came running. Dad, you're back! Ethan crashed into Dave's legs. Leo was more reserved, but his eyes were bright. Mom said you saved a girl's life. The doctor saved her life, Dave corrected. I just figured out what was wrong. That's still saving her, Leo insisted. The four of them went inside. Alexandra insisted Dave and Ethan stay for dinner, and over pasta and garlic bread, they told the boys an edited version of the trip. So you just drove there? In the middle of the night? Ethan's eyes were wide. Sometimes that's what you have to do, Dave said. When someone needs help, you help. That's it. Like a superhero, Ethan said. More like a person doing what's right. After dinner, while the boys played video games in the living room, Dave and Alexandra sat on the back patio, watching the sky fade from orange to purple. I've been thinking, Alexandra said softly, about what Leo said, about us. Dave's heart rate kicked up. Yeah. I think I'm ready to try this, whatever this is. Alexandra turned to face him. I know it's complicated. I know we're business partners. And our kids are friends, and there are a million reasons to be careful. But I don't want to be careful anymore. I've spent 10 years being careful, and it got me nowhere. So I'm asking you, Dave Keller, would you like to go on a date with me? Like an actual date? Where we're not talking about the foundation or medical reform or our kids, just us? Dave felt something warm bloom in his chest. Fear, yes, but also excitement, hope, the possibility of something good. Yes, he said. I'd like that very much. Alexandra's smile was radiant. Good, because I already made reservations for Saturday night. You didn't even know if I'd say yes. I was optimistic. They sat in comfortable silence for a few more minutes, shoulders touching, watching the first stars appear. Inside, Leo whispered to Ethan, "Told you. Valentine's Day." "It's not Valentine's Day yet," Ethan hissed back. "That's not until February. Close enough. You owe me $5. Do not. Do too." Their bickering was interrupted by Mrs. Chen shushing them. "Let your parents have their moment." "They're not dating yet," Ethan protested. Mrs. Chen smiled knowingly. "Give them time, dear. Give them time." The date, when Saturday finally arrived, was both perfect and disastrous. Perfect because Dave showed up with flowers. Sunflowers. Alexandra's favorite, which he'd found out by subtly asking Leo. Perfect because the restaurant Alexandra had chosen was intimate without being pretentious, the kind of place where they could actually talk. Perfect because, for the first time in years, both of them felt like regular people instead of a grieving widower and a guilt-ridden billionaire. Disastrous because halfway through the appetizers, Alexandra's phone rang. Rebecca, calling with an emergency. "I'm so sorry," Alexandra said, looking genuinely distressed. "I told her only to call if it was urgent." "Take it," Dave said. "It's fine." But it wasn't fine. The call was about the lawsuits. One of the defendants had filed a countersuit, claiming defamation and malicious prosecution. The case was getting uglier. Alexandra spent 15 minutes on the phone while Dave picked at his salad. When she finally hung up, she looked miserable. "I'm the worst date ever." "You're really not." "Dave, we haven't even gotten our entrees, and I've already spent a quarter of our time on the phone about work." "Alex, this is our life, the foundation, the work. We can't just shut it off because we're trying to have a normal evening." "But I wanted tonight to be different. I wanted—" Alexandra stopped, frustrated. Dave reached across the table and took her hand. "How about this? We acknowledge that we're never going to be a normal couple. We're two people who are passionate about the same things, who have kids that need us, who are running a foundation trying to change the world. And that's okay. We don't have to pretend to be something we're not. So what do? We have dinner. We talk about the countersuit if we need to. We enjoy each other's company, and we stop worrying about what a date is supposed to look like." Alexandra squeezed his hand. "How are you so good at this?" "Practice. Sarah and I had plenty of dates interrupted by emergency calls. You learn to adapt." They finished dinner. The entrees were excellent, though neither of them could remember later what they'd ordered. They talked about the countersuit, about Sophia's recovery, about the new hotline they were launching. But they also talked about other things, about Alexandra's childhood in Silicon Valley, growing up as the daughter of tech investors who were never home, about Dave's parents, who'd both passed away before Ethan was born, about movies they loved and books they'd read and the ridiculous things their kids did that made them simultaneously laugh and want to pull their hair out. By the time dessert arrived, they'd forgotten to be nervous. "Can I tell you something?" Alexandra said, toying with her spoon. "Anything. I haven't been on a date since Leo's father, and that was complicated." Dave waited, sensing there was more. Leo's father was a colleague. We worked together on a project, things happened, and then I was pregnant. He wanted nothing to do with fatherhood, signed away his parental rights before Leo was even born. I haven't spoken to him in 11 years. That must have been hard. It was, especially when Leo was diagnosed as deaf. Part of me wondered if it was my fault somehow, if I'd done something wrong during pregnancy, if I'd worked too hard or stressed too much. The guilt was crushing. Alexandra looked up at Dave. But then Leo became this incredible kid despite everything. And I realized I didn't need his father. We were fine on our own. "You were more than fine. You're an amazing mother." "I tried to be. But I made so many mistakes. I focused on fixing his deafness instead of celebrating who he was. I threw money at problems instead of actually listening. It took you showing up to make me see what I'd been missing." "You're being too hard on yourself." "Maybe, but I'm also being honest." Alexandra set down her spoon. "Dave, I don't know what I'm doing here with you, with us. I'm terrified I'm going to screw this up like I've screwed up everything else. You're not going to screw it up." "How can you be sure?" "Because you care, because you're trying, because you're sitting here being vulnerable instead of hiding behind walls." Dave smiled. "That's all any of us can do. Show up, be honest, try not to hurt each other too badly. Those are low standards. Welcome to dating in your 40s as a single parent running a medical foundation. Low standards are all we've got." Alexandra laughed, and the tension broke. They finished dessert, split the check despite Dave's protests, and walked to the parking lot together. "So," Alexandra said, standing beside her car, "did this count as a successful first date despite the work call?" "Definitely, though I should warn you, I'm a firm believer in second dates." "Oh, really? And what happens on second dates?" "I don't know. Maybe we let the kids come. Do something fun? Take the pressure off?" Alexandra considered this. "The aquarium? The boys would love it. Perfect. Next Saturday?" "It's a date." They stood there for a moment, neither quite ready to leave. Finally, Dave leaned in and kissed her. It was gentle, tentative, the kiss of two people who'd been hurt before and were trying to be brave. When they pulled apart, Alexandra was smiling. "That was nice," she said. "Yeah, it was." They said goodnight, and Dave watched her drive away before getting into his own truck. On the way home, he called Ethan, who was having a sleepover at a friend's house. "How was your date?" Ethan asked immediately. "It was good. Really good." "Did you kiss her?" "That's none of your business." "You totally did. Leo owes me $10 now. You two need to stop betting on my love life." "Never." "So when's the next date?" "Next Saturday." "And you're invited. We're going to the aquarium." "Yes. Can Leo come?" "That's the plan." "This is the best day ever." Dave smiled. "Yeah, buddy, it kind of is." The week that followed was chaos. The countersuit generated negative press. 3 more donors pulled out. 2 board members resigned. Rebecca looked like she was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. But through it all, the foundation kept working. The mobile clinics kept running. The hotline launched successfully, fielding over 200 calls in the first 48 hours. And Sofia Gonzalez was released from the hospital with a treatment plan and a promise to follow up with the foundation's audiology team. On Friday afternoon, Dave got a call from a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Keller, this is Marcus Rivera." Dave's breath caught. Marcus, his old partner, the paramedic who'd covered for him the night Sarah died. "Marcus, Jesus, I haven't heard from you in years." "I know, I'm sorry about that. I've been dealing with some stuff." Marcus's voice was rough, hesitant. "But I saw you on TV, the 60 Minutes interview, and I wanted to call. To tell you I'm proud of you, man. Of what you're doing." Dave felt his throat tighten. "Thanks. That means a lot. I'm in Arizona now, working construction like you heard. It's good work, honest. But I miss medicine sometimes. Miss feeling like I was making a difference." "You made a difference, Marcus. You always did. Not enough. Not the night that mattered." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "I tried to save her, Dave. Sarah. I tried everything. But there were so many people, so much blood, I couldn't—" I know you did everything you could." "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't save her." Dave closed his eyes. "It wasn't your fault. It was never your fault. You were a hero that night, Marcus. You saved lives. Just because you couldn't save everyone doesn't mean you failed." Marcus made a sound that might have been a sob. "I needed to hear that. I've been carrying that guilt for 7 years. So have I, but I'm learning to put it down. You should too." They talked for another 20 minutes, catching up, sharing stories, finding a kind of closure that neither had known they needed. When Marcus finally hung up, Dave sat in his office staring at the phone. Alexandra found him there 10 minutes later. "Hey, you okay?" Dave looked up. "Yeah, just got a call from an old friend, someone I thought I'd lost." "Good news?" "The best." Alexandra sat beside him. "Want to talk about it?" Dave told her about Marcus, about the guilt they'd both been carrying, about the relief of hearing his old partner's voice and knowing he was okay. "Sounds like you both needed that conversation," Alexandra said. "We did." Dave leaned back in his chair. "You know what's funny? For years I avoided thinking about that night, avoided anyone connected to it. But now I'm realizing that avoiding it didn't make it hurt less. It just made me lonely. And now? Now I'm facing it, talking about it. And it still hurts, but it's different. It's manageable." Alexandra rested her head on his shoulder. "I'm glad you called Marcus back. I'm glad you're healing. We're both healing, together." They sat like that for a while, comfortable in the silence, until Rebecca knocked on the door with another crisis that needed handling. Such was life at the Morrison Foundation. Chaos and hope, progress and setbacks, all tangled together in a way that was exhausting and exhilarating in equal measure. But Dave wouldn't have traded it for anything, because for the first time in 7 years, he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Saturday morning arrived bright and clear, the kind of California day that made people forget winter existed anywhere else. Dave picked up Alexandra and Leo at 9, Ethan bouncing with excitement in the back seat. "Did you know the Monterey Bay Aquarium has over 35,000 animals?" Ethan announced as soon as Leo climbed into the truck. "I read about it online, and they have sea otters and jellyfish and this huge kelp forest tank that's 3 stories tall." Leo signed something, and Alexandra translated. "He says he's most excited about the touch pools. He wants to feel what a starfish feels like." "We can spend all day there if you want," Dave said, pulling onto the highway. "No rush." The drive took 2 hours, and the boys spent most of it playing games on Leo's tablet, while Dave and Alexandra talked quietly in the front seat about everything except work. It felt normal, domestic even, like they were a family taking a weekend trip instead of 2 damaged people trying to figure out how to be happy again. The aquarium was crowded, full of families and tourists and school groups. Leo kept his noise-canceling headphones on, but Dave noticed he was wearing them less these days. The world was becoming manageable, one sound at a time. They spent hours wandering through exhibits. Ethan pressed his face against every glass tank, narrating facts he'd memorized. Leo was quieter, but equally enchanted, especially when they reached the touch pools and he could run his fingers through the cool water, feeling sea anemones contract and hermit crabs scuttle across his palm. "It tickles," Leo said aloud, his speech still careful but improving every day. "They're so weird." A little girl standing next to Leo looked at him curiously. "Why do you talk funny?" Before Dave or Alexandra could intervene, Ethan stepped forward. "He talks like that because he just learned how. He couldn't hear for his whole life until a few months ago, so talking is new. It's actually really cool if you think about it." The little girl's eyes went wide. "You couldn't hear at all?" Leo shook his head. "Not until my mom's friend Dave found a bug in my ear." "A bug?" The girl looked horrified and fascinated in equal measure. "Like a real bug?" "A larva," Leo confirmed. "It was gross." The girl ran off to tell her parents, and Leo turned to Ethan with a small smile. "Thanks." "That's what friends do," Ethan said simply. "We've got each other's backs." Dave felt Alexandra's hand slip into his, and when he looked at her, there were tears in her eyes. "They're good kids," Dave whispered. "The best," Alexandra agreed. They ate lunch in the aquarium's cafe, the boys debating which sea creature would win in a fight, while Dave and Alexandra watched with amusement. "Octopus, definitely," Ethan insisted. 8 arms. They can change color. They're basically ninjas. "But sea turtles have shells," Leo countered. "They're protected. The octopus can't hurt them." "It doesn't need to hurt them. It just needs to outsmart them." "Since when is this about smarts? I thought we were talking about fighting." Dave leaned toward Alexandra. "This could go on for hours." "I know, it's perfect." After lunch, they visited the sea otter exhibit. The otters were putting on a show, diving and spinning and cracking open shells on their bellies. One particular otter kept returning to the glass where Leo stood, pressing its face close as if trying to get a better look at the boy. "I think he likes you," Alexandra said. Leo placed his hand on the glass, and the otter mirrored the gesture with its paw. For a moment, boy and animal stared at each other through the barrier, and Dave felt something profound in the exchange. 2 creatures learning to exist in a world that wasn't quite built for them, finding ways to adapt and thrive anyway. "Mom," Leo said quietly, not taking his eyes off the otter. "I'm glad I can hear now, even though it's hard sometimes." Alexandra knelt beside her son. "Yeah?" "Yeah. Because I wouldn't have heard Ethan standing up for me today, or the sound the sea anemones make when the water moves, or you laughing." Leo looked at her. "I like your laugh." Alexandra pulled him into a hug, and Dave had to look away, his own eyes stinging. They stayed until closing time, the boys exhausted but happy as they trudged back to the truck. Both fell asleep within minutes of hitting the highway, their heads tipped together like bookends. Today was perfect, Alexandra said softly, not wanting to wake them. It was. Dave, can I ask you something? When you think about the future now, what do you see? Dave considered the question carefully. 6 months ago, the future had been a gray blur, something to be endured rather than anticipated. But now? I see Ethan growing up, learning who he is. I see the foundation expanding, helping more kids. I see... He hesitated. I see you and Leo. I see us figuring this out together, whatever this becomes. And that doesn't scare you? It terrifies me, but it also makes me happy. And I haven't felt happy in a long time. Alexandra reached over and squeezed his knee. Me too. They drove in comfortable silence until Dave's phone rang. Rebecca's name flashed on the screen. I should probably take this, Dave said apologetically. Go ahead. Dave answered on speakerphone. Hey, Rebecca, what's up? Dave, I'm so sorry to call on your day off, but we just got some news. The countersuit was dropped. Dave nearly swerved. What? Dr. Chen, she reached out to her former colleagues, had some frank conversations about what happened with Leo and what we're trying to accomplish. She convinced 3 of the defendants to drop out of the countersuit. Without them, the case fell apart. That's incredible. It gets better. 2 of those doctors want to join our training program. They said if they'd failed Leo that badly, they needed to learn how to do better. Dave looked at Alexandra, who had tears streaming down her face. Rebecca, that's the best news we could have gotten. I thought you'd want to know right away. Enjoy the rest of your day off. We'll celebrate properly on Monday. When Dave hung up, Alexandra was openly crying. Hey, it's good news, Dave said, concerned. I know, Alexandra wiped her eyes. For months, I've been so angry. At the doctors, at the system, at everyone who failed Leo. And now some of them are actually trying to change. To be better. It feels like maybe we're actually making a difference. We are making a difference. Every day. Alexandra laughed through her tears. Look at us. Can't even take a day off without work finding us. Told you we'd never be a normal couple. Good. Normal is overrated. The following week brought more changes. The story about the dropped countersuit made national news, framing it as a victory for patient advocacy and medical reform. Donations started pouring in again, not just from wealthy benefactors, but from regular people sending $20, $50, whatever they could spare, with notes that said things like, "Thank you for fighting for our kids," and "My daughter was misdiagnosed for years. I wish you'd been around then." The foundation's hotline was overwhelmed with calls. Rebecca hired more staff to handle the volume. Dr. Chen's training programs expanded to 5 cities. The mobile clinics added 3 more units to their fleet. But the biggest change came from an unexpected source. 2 weeks after the aquarium trip, Dave got a call from Marcus Rivera. I've been thinking, Marcus said without preamble, about what you said, about making a difference. Yeah? I want to come back. Not to emergency medicine. I don't think I can handle that yet. But maybe I could work with your foundation, use my skills to help kids instead of reliving the worst night of my life every shift. Dave felt something swell in his chest. Marcus, are you serious? Dead serious. I've got my paramedic license still. I could staff the mobile clinics, train volunteers, help with the emergency response network you're building. If you'll have me. If we'll have you? Marcus, you'd be perfect. When can you start? How about Monday? Dave laughed. Monday it is. Welcome to the team. When he told Alexandra, she immediately started making arrangements. We'll set him up with an apartment near the office. Get him enrolled in our benefits. Does he have family? 3 kids, wife, they're all in Arizona. Then we'll help them relocate, whatever they need. Alex, you don't have to... Yes, I do. He's your friend. He's helped save lives. And we need good people. Alexandra smiled. Besides, this is what the foundation is about. Second chances, redemption, building something better from broken pieces. Marcus arrived the following Monday, and Dave barely recognized him. The haunted look was still there in his eyes, but underneath it was something new. Hope, maybe. Or purpose. Thank you, Marcus said, shaking Dave's hand. For giving me this opportunity. Thank you for taking it. I've missed working with you. I've missed this. All of it. Making a difference, helping people, being part of something that matters. Dave introduced Marcus to the team, and within days it was like he'd always been there. He had a natural way with the children they served, his calm demeanor and gentle hands putting even the most anxious kids at ease. The other volunteers loved him. Parents trusted him immediately. "You found a good one," Rebecca told Dave one afternoon. "Marcus is exactly what we needed." "He's exactly what I needed too," Dave admitted. "Having him here, it's like getting back a piece of myself I thought was lost." As winter turned to spring, the foundation continued to grow. They'd now screened over 1,500 children across California. 17 had regained hearing after treatment for conditions that had been missed by other doctors. Dozens more had been diagnosed with treatable infections, foreign objects, or structural issues that could be addressed. But more importantly, they'd started to change the conversation around pediatric medicine. Medical schools were incorporating the foundation's training materials into their curricula. Insurance companies were updating their coverage requirements to include more comprehensive pediatric exams, and parents everywhere were learning to advocate more fiercely for their children. The lawsuits were settled quietly out of court. The doctors involved agreed to participate in mandatory training and to pay settlements that were donated to the foundation. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Through it all, Dave and Alexandra's relationship deepened. They were careful to maintain boundaries at work, but outside the office, they became inseparable. Family dinners became routine. Weekend trips were planned. The boys stopped asking when their parents would make it official and started just assuming they were together. "Are you going to marry Miss Morrison?" Ethan asked one night while Dave tucked him in. Dave paused. "I don't know, buddy. Maybe someday. If we both want that." "I think you should. Then Leo would be my real brother. He's already your real brother in all the ways that matter." "I know, but it would be cool to make it official." Ethan yawned. "Plus, then we'd have a big house to live in. Leo's house is way cooler than ours." Dave laughed. "Is that what this is about? You want the fancy house?" "No, I want us all to be together. The house is just a bonus." Dave kissed his son's forehead. "We'll see, bud. Good things take time." But the truth was, Dave had been thinking about it too, about what forever might look like with Alexandra, about whether he was ready to take that step. He thought Sarah would approve. She'd always told him that if something happened to her, she wanted him to be happy, to find love again, to give Ethan a complete family. But wanting something and being ready for it were different things. Yes, the decision came at an unexpected moment. It was late May, almost a year since Dave had first pulled that larva from Leo's ear. The foundation was hosting its first annual gala, a fundraising event that had been months in the planning. Over 500 people were expected to attend, including celebrities, politicians, and medical professionals from around the country. Dave hated the idea. He wasn't built for formal events and small talk with billionaires. But Alexandra insisted it was necessary. "We need to keep the money flowing," she'd said. And like it or not, galas are how that happens in this world. So Dave rented a tux, coached Ethan on proper behavior, and tried not to think about how uncomfortable the entire evening was going to be. The gala was held at a historic mansion in San Francisco, the kind of place with marble columns and crystal chandeliers and waiters in white gloves. Dave felt out of place immediately, but Alexandra appeared beside him looking stunning in a deep blue dress and took his arm. "You look miserable," she whispered. "I'm fine." "You're terrible at lying. Come on. Let's get through the speeches and then we can hide in a corner and make fun of people's outfits." The evening progressed as expected. Alexandra gave a speech about the foundation's work, her voice strong and clear as she talked about Leo and the children they'd helped. Dr. Chen spoke about the importance of humility in medicine. Marcus shared his story about leaving emergency medicine and finding purpose again. And then, unexpectedly, Leo took the stage. Dave hadn't known this was planned. From the look on Alexandra's face, neither had she. Leo stood at the podium, his hands shaking slightly, his voice uncertain but determined. The room fell silent. "Hi, I'm Leo Morrison. Most of you know my story. I was deaf for 10 years because doctors missed something simple. And then Dave, Mr. Keller, found it in 5 minutes." Leo paused, gathering courage. "A lot of people think this story is about miracles or about how I got fixed. But that's not what it's about. It's about being seen. about someone caring enough to actually look at me instead of just running tests. The audience was completely still. Before I could hear, I thought something was wrong with me, that I was broken. But I wasn't broken. I was just different. And the problem wasn't me. It was that nobody looked close enough to see what I needed. Leo's voice grew stronger. This foundation helps kids like me, but it also helps kids who don't need to be fixed. Kids who are deaf or disabled or different in ways that don't have easy solutions. Because everyone deserves to be seen, to be heard, to be accepted exactly as they are. Tears were visible on Leo's cheeks now, but he kept going. Not every story has a happy ending like mine. Some kids won't ever hear, some will always struggle, and that's okay. Because the point isn't fixing everyone. The point is seeing everyone, accepting everyone, helping everyone find their own way forward. Leo looked directly at Dave and Alexandra. Dave taught me that being different doesn't mean being less. My mom taught me that love means showing up even when you don't know what to do. And together, they taught me that family isn't about biology or living in the same house. It's about choosing each other, every day, even when it's hard. The room erupted into applause. People were standing, many crying openly. But Dave couldn't move. He was rooted to his spot, tears streaming down his face, overwhelmed by the courage of this boy who'd been through so much and still found the strength to be vulnerable in front of hundreds of strangers. Alexandra was crying too, her hand clutched in Dave's. When Leo stepped down from the stage, she ran to him, pulling him into her arms. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "So incredibly proud. I wanted people to understand," Leo said, "that we're not trying to fix everyone. We're trying to help everyone." "You did. You made them understand perfectly." The rest of the evening was a blur. People approached Dave and Alexandra constantly, wanting to donate, to volunteer, to share their own stories. By the time the gala ended, they'd raised over $2 million, far more than they'd hoped. But money wasn't what Dave was thinking about as he drove home that night, Ethan asleep in the back seat. He was thinking about what Leo had said, about choosing each other, about family being more than biology. He was thinking about Sarah and the life they'd built together, about how she'd made him promise to be happy if something happened to her, and he was thinking about Alexandra, about the way she looked at him when she thought he wasn't paying attention, about how their kids had become brothers in all the ways that mattered, about how, for the first time since Sarah died, he could imagine a future that included love and partnership and all the messy, beautiful complications that came with it. He was ready. A week later, Dave asked Ethan for permission. "I'm thinking about asking Ms. Morrison to marry me," Dave said over breakfast, "but I wanted to make sure you were okay with it first." Ethan looked up from his cereal, eyes wide. "Really? You're really going to ask her? If you're okay with it, this affects you too, buddy. You'd be getting a new mom, a brother, a whole new life." "Would we live in the big house?" Dave laughed. "I don't know. We'd figure that out together. But that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking if you'd be okay with me marrying her, with us becoming a family." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Will you stop being sad?" Dave's breath caught. "What?" "When you talk about Mom, you get sad. Even when you're smiling, I can see it. You miss her." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "I miss her too, but I don't want you to be sad forever. I want you to be happy. And Ms. Morrison makes you happy. I can tell." Dave pulled his son into a hug, his own tears falling freely now. "You're right. She does make me happy. And marrying her doesn't mean I love your mom any less. It just means I'm ready to love someone else too. Is that okay?" "Yeah, Dad, it's okay. I think Mom would want you to be happy too." "I think you're right." "So can I be in the wedding?" Dave laughed through his tears. "Absolutely. You and Leo both." "Yes." "Wait until Leo finds out. He's going to freak out." "Well, I have to actually propose first, and she has to say yes. She'll say yes, she loves you. Anyone can see that." Dave planned the proposal carefully, with input from both boys. They decided on a place that meant something to all of them, the Foundation's first mobile clinic location in East Palo Alto, where they'd helped Maria and her children almost a year ago. The clinic had become a permanent facility now, staffed full-time and serving hundreds of families. Maria herself worked there as a community liaison, helping connect families with resources they needed. Dave arranged for the clinic to be closed one Saturday afternoon. He decorated the examination room where he'd first worked with Leo, the place where everything had changed. Flowers everywhere, candles, photos of their journey together. Leo and Ethan were in on the plan, hiding with Marcus and Rebecca in the waiting room, ready to celebrate. Dave picked up Alexandra under the pretense of showing her the clinic's new expansion plans. She came dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, no idea what was waiting. "Why are we here on a Saturday?" Alexandra asked as they walked into the building. "I thought the clinic was closed." "It is. I just wanted to show you something." Dave led her to the examination room and opened the door. Alexandra gasped. "Dave, what is this?" "This is where it started," Dave said, taking her hand. "This is where we first worked together. Where I saw how much you loved your son. Where we started building something bigger than either of us." "Dave, let me finish." Dave took a breath. "A year ago, I was just trying to survive. Just trying to be enough for Ethan. I'd convinced myself that I didn't deserve to be happy again, that I'd had my chance at love and I shouldn't ask for more." Tears were already streaming down Alexandra's face. "And then I met you, and you reminded me that life doesn't stop because tragedy happens, that there's still joy to be found, still love to be given, still purpose to be discovered." Dave got down on one knee, pulling a ring from his pocket. "Alexandra Morrison, you are the strongest, most passionate, most infuriating woman I've ever met. You challenge me, you inspire me, you make me want to be better, and I love you. I love you so much it terrifies me. But I'm done being afraid. So I'm asking, will you marry me?" Alexandra was sobbing now, nodding before she could even speak. "Yes. God, yes. Of course, yes." Dave slipped the ring on her finger, a simple band with a small diamond, nothing ostentatious, just like Alexandra had once mentioned she preferred, and stood to kiss her. The waiting room erupted in cheers as Leo and Ethan came running in, followed by Marcus, Rebecca, Dr. Chen, and a dozen other Foundation staff members who'd been waiting to celebrate. "You knew?" Alexandra asked Leo, who was grinning ear to ear. "We helped plan it," Leo said proudly. "It was Ethan's idea to do it here." "This is where our family started," Ethan explained. "It seemed right." Alexandra pulled both boys into a hug, Dave wrapping his arms around all three of them. For a moment, they just stood there, a tangle of arms and hearts and second chances. "We're really doing this," Alexandra whispered. "We're really becoming a family." "We already were," Dave said. "We're just making it official." The wedding was small and intimate, held 6 months later in Alexandra's backyard with only close friends and family attending. Leo and Ethan were co-best men, wearing matching suits and taking their duties very seriously. Maria and her family came, as did Marcus and his wife and kids. Dr. Chen was there, along with Rebecca and the core Foundation staff. Sarah's parents came too, at Dave's invitation. They'd been hesitant at first, worried that attending might feel like a betrayal of their daughter's memory. But Dave had insisted. "Sarah would want you here," he'd told them. "She'd want to see that Ethan has family, that we're all moving forward together." They'd come, and when Dave saw Sarah's mother crying during the ceremony, he'd mouthed "thank you" to her. She'd nodded, smiling through her tears. The ceremony itself was simple. Dave and Alexandra had written their own vows, promising not perfection, but presence. Not to fix each other, but to see each other. Not to forget the past, but to build a future worthy of the people they'd lost and the people they'd become. "I can't promise I won't mess this up sometimes," Alexandra said, her voice shaking. "I can't promise I won't work too much or get too focused on solving problems. But I promise to show up, to try, to love you and Ethan with everything I have, to build a family that honors both where we've been and where we're going. And I promise," Dave said, "to be patient with your ambitious projects and your 3 a.m. brainstorming sessions, to support your dreams even when they scare me, to be the partner you deserve and the father our boys need, to love you not despite our complicated history, but because of it. Because we've both been broken, and we're choosing to be whole together." When they kissed, Leo and Ethan cheered the loudest. The reception was filled with stories. Marcus told tales of Dave's early days as a paramedic, making everyone laugh with stories of Dave's terrible coffee habit and his uncanny ability to calm panicking patients. Rebecca shared about the foundation's early days when they were just a crazy idea and a lot of hope. Dr. Chen talked about how the foundation had changed her life, giving her a chance to be the doctor she'd always wanted to be. But the speech that mattered most came from Leo. "When I was deaf," he said, standing at his table with Ethan beside him, "I thought that was who I was, the deaf kid, the kid who needed fixing. But Dave and my mom taught me something. They taught me that who I am isn't about what I can or can't do. It's about who I choose to be, and I choose to be part of this family. I choose Ethan as my brother. I choose Dave as my dad." He looked at Dave, his eyes shining. "If that's okay with you?" Dave could barely see through his tears. He walked over to Leo and knelt down. "That's more than okay. I'd be honored to be your dad." Leo hugged him fiercely, and the whole reception erupted in applause. Later, as the sun set and the party wound down, Dave found himself standing at the edge of the property, looking out over the valley. Alexandra appeared beside him, her wedding dress glowing in the fading light. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "Everything. Nothing. How a year ago I was fixing a boiler and now I'm married to a billionaire and running a medical foundation." Alexandra laughed. "When you put it that way, it does sound ridiculous. The best things usually do." Dave put his arm around her. "I was also thinking about Sarah, about how she'd love this, how she'd love you and Leo, how she'd be so happy that Ethan has a family again. Do you think she'd approve?" "I know she would. She always said that love isn't finite, that we don't have to stop loving people who are gone to love people who are here. She'd want this for us." Alexandra leaned into him. "I hope I can live up to that, to her memory, to everything she meant to you. You don't have to live up to anything. You just have to be you. That's all I need." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the last light fade from the sky. Tomorrow they'd start their honeymoon, a week in Hawaii with the boys, because neither could bear to be away from their kids for long. Next month they'd merge households, figuring out how to combine their lives into something new and whole. And after that, the foundation would continue growing, helping more children, changing more minds, building something that mattered. But tonight, in this moment, everything was perfect. "Thank you," Alexandra whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me. Really seeing me. Not the money or the success or the mistakes. Just me." Dave kissed the top of her head. "That goes both ways. Thank you for seeing me too." 1 year later, the Leo Morrison Foundation had expanded to 12 states. Over 5,000 children had been screened through their mobile clinics. 43 children had regained hearing or received treatment for conditions that had been previously missed. Hundreds more had been connected with resources, therapy, and support systems that changed their lives. The training programs had reached over 2,000 medical professionals, fundamentally changing how pediatric examinations were conducted across the country. Medical schools were incorporating the Foundation's protocols into their standard curriculum. Insurance companies had updated their policies to require more comprehensive exams. And perhaps most importantly, the conversation had changed. Parents were advocating more fiercely for their children. Doctors were learning to listen. The system, slowly but surely, was becoming more human. Dave stood on stage at the Foundation's second annual gala, this time comfortable in his role as executive director, Leo and Ethan beside him in matching suits. 2 years ago, Dave said into the microphone, I was a maintenance worker who pulled a bug out of a kid's ear. I had no idea that moment would change my life, that it would lead to this foundation, this work, this family. He gestured to where Alexandra sat in the front row, her hand resting on her slightly rounded belly. They'd just found out they were expecting a baby girl, a surprise that had them both terrified and thrilled. But here's what I've learned, Dave continued. Every single one of us has the power to change someone's life. It doesn't take a medical degree or $1 billion or special skills. It just takes paying attention, caring enough to look beyond the obvious, seeing people as people, not problems to solve. Leo stepped forward to the microphone. His speech was clear now, barely distinguishable from any other child his age. Some of you know I was deaf for 10 years, but that's not my whole story. My whole story is about people who refuse to give up on me. who saw me for who I was and who I could be. And now I get to help other kids feel seen too. Ethan added, "Our family's weird. We've got Dave, who used to be a paramedic but became a plumber but is now running a foundation. We've got Alexandra, who's a tech genius, and our mom. We've got Leo, who was deaf but now isn't. We've got me, who lost his first mom but got a new family. And soon we'll have a baby sister. But weird is good. Weird means we didn't give up when things got hard. Weird means we chose each other." The audience gave them a standing ovation. After the speeches, after the fundraising and the networking and all the necessary parts of running a foundation, Dave found himself on the balcony with Marcus, both of them escaping the crowd for a moment. "You did good, man," Marcus said, clinking his beer against Dave's. "You took your pain and turned it into something beautiful. Sarah would be so proud." "We did good," Dave corrected. "None of this happens without you, without all of us. Still, it's pretty amazing. 2 years ago we were both barely functioning, and now look at us." Dave looked back through the ballroom windows at Alexandra laughing with Dr. Chen, at Leo and Ethan playing with some of the other kids in attendance, at Rebecca coordinating what seemed like 100 things at once. "Yeah," Dave said softly. "Look at us." That night, after they'd gotten home and put the boys to bed, Dave and Alexandra sat on their bedroom balcony, looking out over the lights of Silicon Valley. "I've been thinking about names," Alexandra said, her hand on her belly. "For the baby?" What would you think about Sarah, for the middle name?" Dave felt his throat tighten. "Really? She's part of our story, part of who you are, which makes her part of who we are as a family. And I want our daughter to know about the woman who came before me, who loved you first, who gave you Ethan." Dave pulled Alexandra close. "That would be perfect. What about the first name?" "I was thinking Hope, because that's what you gave me, what we gave each other." "Hope Sarah Keller Morrison," Dave said, testing it out. "I love it." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, Alexandra's head on Dave's shoulder, his hand resting on her belly where their daughter grew. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't been at our house that day?" Alexandra asked. "If Leo had collapsed when someone else was there?" "Sometimes. But then I remember something Sarah used to say. She believed that we end up exactly where we're supposed to be, even if the path there is painful. And I think she was right. Everything that happened, losing her, those 7 years of grief, even fixing boilers, it all led me here. To you. To this family. To this work that matters. You really think it was meant to be? I think we make it mean something by choosing to show up, by choosing each other, by choosing to build something good from the broken pieces." Dave kissed her forehead. "The rest is just details." Alexandra smiled. "I love you, Dave Keller." "I love you too, Alexandra Morrison Keller." "When did we decide to hyphenate?" "Just now. Go with it." She laughed, and the sound carried out over the valley, mixing with the distant hum of traffic and the rustle of wind through trees and all the other sounds that made up a life being lived fully. Inside, Leo stirred in his sleep, still wearing the special ear monitors the audiologist had prescribed to help him adjust to nighttime sounds. Ethan was sprawled across his bed, one arm flung over the side, peaceful in the way only children can be. And in her mother's womb, Hope Sarah Keller Morrison kicked for the first time, though it would be weeks before Alexandra could feel it. In Arizona, Marcus Rivera kissed his wife goodnight and thought about how grateful he was for second chances. In her modest apartment, Dr. Elizabeth Chen reviewed case files for the Foundation's next training session, determined to help other doctors avoid the mistakes she'd made. In Fresno, Sofia Gonzalez practiced her violin, the music clearer than it had ever been before. And in East Palo Alto, Maria watched her children sleep and whispered a prayer of thanks for the foundation that had saved her daughter's life. All of these lives, connected by a single moment when one man looked at one boy and chose to see him. Really see him. That was the real miracle. Not the bug that was found or the hearing that was restored, but the choice to care. The decision to act. The willingness to believe that one person really could make a difference. Dave stood up, offering his hand to Alexandra. "Come on, let's go to bed. Big day tomorrow." "What's tomorrow?" The Oakland Clinic opens, and I promised Leo and Ethan they could help with the ribbon cutting. Of course you did. Alexandra took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. You know they're going to want to come to every single opening from now on. Good. They should. This is their legacy as much as ours. They walked inside together, checking on the boys one more time before retiring to their own room. And as Dave lay in the darkness next to his wife, listening to her breathing even out as she fell asleep, he thought about the journey that had brought him here, the pain of losing Sarah, the years of grief and guilt, the random chance that put him at the Morrison estate on the morning Leo collapsed, the courage it took to look beyond the obvious, the foundation they'd built, the family they'd become. It wasn't a fairy tale. There were still hard days, still moments of doubt, still times when the weight of the past felt overwhelming. But there was also joy, purpose, love, hope. And in the end, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Dave closed his eyes and let sleep take him, knowing that when he woke, there would be work to do, children to help, lives to change, a family to love. The sound of silence had given way to the sound of life, messy and beautiful and real, and he wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.